Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. It is 2023. It is July. Not July. Why did I say July? Help me, guys.
Let's go.
It is the other month. It is
other
January.
It
is January 7th at the time of recording. I am your host, Brian Vitale. Apparently I've had too many holiday snacks. Joining me today, we've got the full crew back after a well-deserved break. We've got Josh Torres.
New year, new home, new life. That's my motto.
We have Adam Vitale.
Hello.
We have James Glizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
So it has been over a month since we have recorded a regular episode of our Tetracast. A week ago, we have released our end of the year special edition of the Tetracast with our RPG of the year results for 2022. It ended up being something like just shy of 7 hours of deliberation for all of our ranking all of the games of the year, giving all the category winners, shouting out some of the features on the site. It's a lot, and if you haven't listened to that, I strongly encourage that you do so. And it has a lot of people that you don't get to hear of very often on the staff, including Alex. We got Scott in there, we got Jess in there, and all of us basically looking back at an incredibly busy year that was 2022. And that podcast is up on our standard RSS feed. It's up on the podcast services. Hopefully you should have found it just alongside all the regular Tetracast episodes. But here we are, back to the grind. I
would just say very straightforward, normal discussions on that podcast. Everything went smoothly because, as you can see from the 7-hour runtime, just everybody agreed on everything.
And it didn't take 90 minutes to decide which game had the best writing and storytelling. It only took 80 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. I have no idea.
No, it's I don't remember what the timestamps are pretty crazy. And I remember we got that uploaded on YouTube as well. And of course, when you put the timestamps there, it like divides up the timeline on the bottom. It's like, what is this huge chunk? Oh wait, that's the writing and storytelling award. Always seems to take forever.
We all made the right decisions. No one, everything is 100% objectively correct. And if you don't agree, that you're just wrong. That's how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not going to recap all the results here because that's what the RPG of the Year podcast is for. But so we have the podcast episode for that deliberation. Plus, there are 3 features up on the site. There's our Best of 2022 feature, which is basically the rundown of all the award winners, our RPG of the year, the top 5, top 10, everything all condensed into one. We've got the RPG site staff most anticipated feature. This is a list of, Adam, I believe it's 13 games that we have listed as anticipated for 2023. What that one is that we tally the site staff and contributors, and anything that met a minimum threshold. I believe it was just anything that got more than 1 vote from a dozen staff members was put onto that list, and no order other than the winner, which was Final Fantasy XVI. That hasn't been on the list for like the last 3 years, but this year we mean it for sure. And then, of course, we have the results of our reader poll, which was a poll that we held on our social media channels throughout the month of December. And we have the results of that, which is our RPG site readers' best RPG of 2022 and their most anticipated game of 2023. So we got those 3 features up on the site.
I really like when Adam pointed out a few days ago for the most anticipated list for Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Like, it was on there for like 2 years, and then it was on there again for like 2 other years, or wasn't on there for 2 other years. Like, we kept flipping and flopping whether it should be on the list or not for certain years. I think it was like 2020, it was on there, and then like, was it on 2018? It was there too, Adam? I forgot.
No, I think it was. I think it was 2020. It was on our list for anticipated for 2020. Then was off the list for 2021. Then was on the list again for 2022, and is off the list for this year, 2023. I guess that's kind of what that marketing cycle will do to you, depending on how good of a showing they had at Grand Blue Festival. Because that hasn't happened yet, right? Because that's this month, this year.
It got delayed till like the midpoint of June. I mean midpoint of January. Sorry.
What month is it?
Oh, yeah. We've got all of it.
I like it. I like it. It's like
I'm sorry.
we're in a J month, I guess.
I'm sorry. I stayed up. Was it watching Higurashi with my friends all the way till 6 a.m. last night? I'm sorry, guys.
Higurashi.
Chow is back to normalcy here.
Oh man.
Yeah. So if they had an early
January straight.
Nope. If they had an early December showing and had a really rocking trailer, maybe it would have shown up for 2023. But it's not there. Yes, we are aware of it. But I guess when it's been waiting for so long, and there's been some things that have been announced more recently, maybe there's a little bit of recency.
This will surely be the year this time, guys. Surely.
Nah.
Wow, no faith anymore.
And then the last features that we have up on the site that's kind of end of year related is that Josh, James, and myself put up some personal top 10 lists for our rankings for the year, and they're up on the site just as standard features. I know for my list, it's basically normally I play like 1 or 2 games that aren't RPGs that I like to sneak on the list and put. I remember I put like the Age of Empires Definitive Edition on there once. I put in I think I put in like one of the recent Wolfenstein games on there once, but this year for my list, it was just all RPGs. It was just like the standard list in a slightly different order. And I felt kind of bad, but I guess that kind of is 2022 in a microcosm. Just, it would not stop releasing RPGs. And unfortunately, or fortunately, 2023 looks kind of the same way. We've got One Piece Odyssey releasing in like a week, then Fire Emblem Engage releasing like 10 days after that, and it's not going to slow down in February with all the other games that are releasing. So no rest for the wicked.
February has too many fucking games.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like my list isn't like too surprising either. I guess, like I guess the most surprising thing on there is like Marvel's Midnight Suns made the list on mine, because like I was like, I really enjoyed that game, but other than that, I mean, it's everything I've talked about a lot on this podcast. I think the only one that I haven't really talked about as much on the podcast is like Vampire Survivors, but that's a game that's like I like firing it up like every so often. I kept just coming back, and I still fire it up just to have some a good time. But it's it was a pretty easy list to make in terms of like what games should be on there. I think the trickier part is like where should go where. Especially at like the last, like the top 5, it's like I had to really start thinking about like what did I really, really, really enjoy. But other than that, it's not a big surprise for me.
Did Star Ocean make it?
No, unfortunately.
I
know. I had to really think about that. I didn't even get the honorable mentions. I just barely missed honorable mentions too.
Saw Dealfield made honorable mentions.
That's right. We go.
Hell yeah. The DLC.
Yeah, it's like March or something, right? The Walter Quinn thing.
I don't know certified Dealfield moment.
I know.
One thing I do want to say, just for people who are too lazy to go to our website and read it, or our Twitter. So for the polls for the readers, because I think a lot of people are interested in like, what does the community think?
Yeah.
I don't care what we think. That's a joke. But the winner for the Game of the Year or RPG of the Year 2022 from the readers was Xenoblade Chronicles 3. If I remember correctly, it got 38% of the vote, and it was the highest percentage of any singular vote year for the readers. Like basically, Xenoblade got more votes in its year by percentage than any other game in any other year, and it also had like the highest like winning margin by percentage over the number 2, which in this year was Elden Ring. So like Xenoblade 3 was a hit.
Yeah, our community really liked it. Big surprise, yeah.
Like it even beat like I think the next biggest one was several years ago, Persona 5 over Nier Automata. But yeah, so Xenoblade 3 was basically the biggest winning percentage and the biggest like overall percentage of for the reader vote. And for most anticipated, it was also a runaway, although not to the same extent, but it was Final Fantasy XVI. That I believe that's been on the most anticipated vote 3 years in a row, and 3 years ago it was number 2. 2 years ago it was number 2. This year it's number 1. So our
release date bump
Final Fantasy 16 for a while. So
No, and we've had it on the list 3 years as well for our staff, and I guess because we kind of picked from the same pool, but it was wishful thinking, and then it was maybe comes out in 2022, and now it's like, all right, we got a release date, and this was the first year it actually won our staff most anticipated, and it's kind of the first time in a while that it's been like kind of the expected, because last year it was like for 2022 it was Triangle Strategy, and the year before that I think it was a tie between Monster Hunter and Bravely Default 2. So this is the first time that it's like the marquee JRPG gets the most anticipated vote. And it's still Final Fantasy, despite the struggles in 13 and 15 for single player Final Fantasy games. But I guess it's had a really good showing. It's had a lot of good talent behind it, and has had has avoided the pitfalls, at least in the development cycle so far as we can tell, that have plagued that company in the past few years. So not too long of a wait until we get our hands on that. And it's probably the biggest title for our site just in general. So I assume that Alex is going to be hitting that one hard when it comes out. And I'm blanking on the release date. I think it's on this podcast document as a news quote. It's June 22nd. Yeah.
I remember Alex was actually saying like, oh no, it's in June, and he's actually considering, do I want to go to E3 or do I want to stay home and play this? Because we'll get early code. Right. So it'll be funny if Final Fantasy XVI is available, like for reviewers during E3, because there's going to be some people there who are like have played it or are playing it.
Right.
It's gonna be kind of weird.
Yeah,
it's not out yet.
I didn't consider that.
They load up their PS5.
I mean, there might be a demo before that point. There might be a demo before that point.
I would love a demo for that game. Oh God, I wish.
Square Enix has had a ton of demos.
Yeah, and they've been hitting those hard recently, and a lot of carryover progress features and things like that. And a couple other shout outs that I'll go ahead and put here. Just because trying to clear up, obviously we didn't podcast pretty much throughout the entire month of December, which was kind of necessary. Obviously the back half of December, we give, people are going home for holidays. We're taking some time to obviously spend a whole Saturday recording up the Game of the Year podcast and writing up those features, and obviously just giving ourselves a bit of a break. But we did get 4 reviews up in the month of December, in addition to the Marvel's Midnight Sun review, which I think landed very early in the month. James put up a review for Monochrome Mobius, Rights and Wrongs Forgotten. Paige put up a review for Dragon Quest Treasures. That was probably one of the bigger December releases, which again will be kind of eligible for any sorts of accolades for our site in this upcoming year. We have the Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion review. That also obviously was a big December release early in the month that will be eligible for our remaster accolades in this coming year, and a game that I want to kind of knock the rust off and remember exactly what all happens in that game, especially if it becomes critical for their Final Fantasy VII Remake series. And then finally, we have the Front Mission First Remake review. I think this one went up like a day after our last podcast on December 5th or so. So this one's been on the site for a while now, but I just want to make sure that Quinton wrote that up for us, and I want to make sure we give it a shout out here. So the back half of the year had a lot of different releases, obviously with some of the remasters and the new games with Dragon Quest Treasures and Monochrome Mobius as well. I want to make sure I at least give those titles and those features their due diligence, since we haven't had a chance to call those out on the podcast. And then finally, here's a pretty important feature and a big feature that we got up on the site, and something that basically Josh willed into existence. And that is a really cool, really special interview that we were able to put with the developer of Asta Libre Revision, which is kind of like one of the indie darlings of 2022 and ranked in our top 5 for RPGs of the year for 2020 for the year. So Josh, I just want to give you a chance here to talk about your experience writing up this interview with, is it KEIZO?
Yeah, KEIZO. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the it's like, when people talk about Asta Libre Revision, it's like it's kind of primarily a one-person solo project throughout 14 or 15 years of development history. So it's been around for a while. Primarily developed by KEIZO. Writing up this interview, like it was so weird. It was really surreal, like getting this opportunity to interview him, because the publisher of Whisper Games kind of just reached out to me on Twitter, because I was like, hey, I'm like really I just tweeted out, I'm really enjoying Asta Libre Revision. Like I reached this chapter, I've been really enjoying it. I can see why people like it. And then the publisher of Whisper Games reached out to me. It's like, I think they emailed me. It's like, hey, you wanna like do something like collaborate or something. I'm like I don't want to really do like a sponsored post or anything. I was like, instead I wanted to, you know, kind of think about the development history of this game, kind of like the design philosophies, because I think a lot of people would like to hear, how this game like became what it is over time. So I asked them, is it okay if like can you get me in contact with KEIZO and like can I interview him? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, do you need like a translator or do you want us to, send us English questions and we'll translate for you? And I was like, no, we have our own. So I collaborated with Kite closely on this. He's been a champ. I know Kite has been having some health issues. So I was like, Kite, it's okay if you like wanted to like slow down or like obviously your health first. It's like I'm okay, like I'm working on it, but I'm like feeling comfortable. I'm like, all right, like take your time, so we really work closely on I'll get your questions, and then Kite over time translated it to Japanese. We sent it over to KEIZO sent us his responses back in Japanese, and he went to go translate it back to English, and we're like constructing it, piece by piece together. It was such a really, really, really cool experience. And I think one of the coolest things about this interview that we don't really do on the side is we were able to provide both the full English transcript and the full Japanese transcript of this interview. So like this interview actually like started circulating around Japanese Twitter for a good while because we actually got to break like new information about Asta Libra before they sent out an official press release. Like we were able to announce first that like it's coming to Switch it's sometime in 2023, and that KEIZO is also working on DLC for the game. And like we're just so supremely extremely thankful to KEIZO and Whisper Games for giving us this opportunity to like not only just like have this experience getting to the mind of KEIZO and like his approach to game development like over 2 decades ago, but also just like giving like our Japanese readers and our Japanese audience like that sort of like direct um interface with that interview as well, with the whole Japanese transcript and all that sort of stuff. So it was such a really cool experience. I think it's one of the funnest things I've ever done on this site, features wise. I think it was so cool.
Yeah, and we, like you said, it's so kind of surreal, but also really exciting to look at that and see that we have the dual language article up. And obviously, I do not speak Japanese, but I saw some Japanese quote tweets of our social shares of that saying like, "Hey, this interview's in Japanese on RPG site on this Western article on this Western website." So kind of cool that we're able to kind of in lieu of a sponsored post, do something that's a little bit more meaningful. And obviously, it is kind of neat to say like we broke the news of the Switch version in development, but just being able to talk to the developer, especially something that has been clearly a passion
Yeah.
project for them, and share that with the world and just be a little bit of a
It's really
megaphone
funny.
for them.
Yeah, it's really funny because like the main reason this game got developed is because KEIZO was like, you know what, I really miss like those old like Falcom style like hack and slash RPGs. Kind of like no one's really making these kinds of games these days. Like I'm just gonna go make my own. I'm gonna learn game development and just make my own and like make it the way that I want to and make it feel satisfying for me. And like that's crazy, you're just working from the ground up.
Good dedication. He
Yeah,
basically took the Thanos meme. I'll do it myself. Like
yeah.
literally.
It's so funny, but that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Switch version shapes up, how what the new DLC is like, and they're also giving it a full like whole English like another editing pass on the English translation, and like tightening that up and making it better on that front as well. So
And that's
you know
really been the only nitpick for the game that I've seen. I have not played it yet, and I believe Adam's like halfway through it. Or
Mhm.
did you finish, Adam? I forget.
I'm like chapter. I've actually it's been a while since the break, but I'm like chapter 5 or 6, so that's I think halfway.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the only nitpick that I've heard of the game is like this game's amazing. The translation's rough, but everything else is fine. But so if they do an editing pass, like that's really the one thing that I've seen people caveat in any way for this game. So kind of cool
Yeah.
that they're going to be addressing that.
Pretty cool.
Well, it's more than an editing pass. I'm in another server, and actually, there's a couple of like people in games localization for like smaller titles, and actually the editor for Muramasa mentioned that one of his buddies was brought on to do the translation, like a
Oh, wow.
retranslation.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, if it's like a whole like just from the ground up retranslation, then that's
because
awesome.
it's like the thing when you read a stilted translation, it's like it's not just enough to re-edit, because it's like
Mhm.
you need to see what you need to look at what the original Japanese said and like make sure that it's accurate in the first place.
Okay,
So,
I didn't know the full scope of like what was going on. I thought it was just another editing process. But yeah, if that's what's happening, then like even better. I think that the game deserves the best. So just
yeah,
making it like be the best possible version before it releases on Switch. Because I think this game will sell like hotcakes on Switch.
yeah.
When it
I'll
comes
be
out.
I'll be completely honest. Like the moment I saw them say, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be a retranslation," is when I was like, "Okay, I'll wait for that before I play it."
Yeah, for sure.
Some people actually like the current translation. They'll be like,
It's kind of charming in its own way because it is very early '90s era style of like localization. Like there's like more like there's a hardware limitation. There's like only like more simpler sentences on dialogue that you can like cram into those dialogue boxes. So it kind of has like exudes that aura and energy in some aspect.
I don't know, like they're just trying to make it sound like it's intentional, the retro translation. But now it's like, what?
We'll see how it goes. Like there's definitely ways you can like still keep that style without keeping the charm of it as well. It's like kind of like what I wish for, like when I read Witch on the Holy Night, the visual novel type when that got re-released in December. Like that game really needed another editing pass because there was like there's like a moment in it where like they misspelled things as thongs in it. I'm like, this is hilarious, but holy crap, this needed more time to get edited for the English script.
Is that being addressed at all, or
I have no idea, to be honest. They've been I haven't really been keeping up on like if they've been radio silent on that or if they're gonna patch it. I have no idea, but like I still really like that visual novel, but the English script is kind of rough at parts for sure.
man? This is why you don't use free shipping. I still haven't seen it.
I mean, it's gonna come out later this month in physical, right?
I ordered the Japanese physical.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
why.
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like it's still not here. It's like rip.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my interview with KEIZO. It's up on the site. You can just go find it, search for it. It was like on the header for like a few weeks because things were slow. But I'm just glad that people liked it and enjoyed it, and it was like this is such a unique experience for Kite and I, and we both really enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. And I hope to do more of that kind of stuff in the in the future, hopefully, because I think that was such a special thing.
Well, I think that kind of covers it for everything we wanted to wrap up from end of 2022 discussions, features. Obviously, we're still working our way through some games that have released in that time period. For instance, over the break, I played primarily two titles. Harvestella, which came out in November, and then Chained Echoes, which has been a game getting a lot of good word of mouth in December. But we are going to open up with probably the first major release, sorry, One Piece Odyssey, in January. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about One Piece later. And that is, of course, Fire Emblem Engage. So this is a game that obviously we are only a few weeks away from playing. It did make our most anticipated list. And we have had a few people on site being able to play it. And on this podcast here, I'm going to hand the microphone proverbially over to Adam, who has been looking at the game over the break. And I think is Scott going to be writing a preview for this as well for the site?
I think so.
All right, so we'll have a written
let me
preview
kind of. This is just kind of a fun, anecdote.
All right, go ahead.
So we got code for this in early to mid December. So reviewers have had this game for a while now, which isn't too uncommon for like January games. But I was considering writing a review. It kind of would depend on like if I felt like I had much to say or whatnot. But then like on my way back to my home in Boise during my flight, like I've had flight delays and flight cancellations, and I ended up stuck in the airport for like 48 hours. And so I just, even if I wanted to write a preview, I wasn't going to have any time to before like the preview embargo. But Scott had also been playing it, so I think he was going to put something together real quick just to have so we could do something for it. But it's kind of funny. I'm in the airport. Here I am on my Switch playing Fire Emblem Engage. Like, I hope no one knows what this is.
That's kind of fun.
I did that with Octopath Traveler 1.
Yeah.
I went to there's like it was like the review code came out around like the Anime Expo time that year, and I was like, well, I want to go to Anime Expo, but I also have to work on this review, so I just brought it there to Anime Expo and played there. I'm like, hopefully no one knows what the fuck I'm playing.
Yeah.
Like an Anime Expo. I feel you.
So in talking about this game right now, there's actually a lot I can't say. The preview embargoes are pretty typically quite limiting, especially for Nintendo games. So there's a lot that I really can't talk about. And even if I wanted to, you probably don't want to hear me talk about like story and stuff yet, right? You know, spoilers and whatnot. But I've been seeing some of the other previews and stuff that have been going up from other sites, and I feel like this is just the what I kind of gather is some people are a little bit confused about like what is this game like and how does it compare to other games. And again, I can't really like fully explain that until you know a review embargo, and like some of those embargo restrictions are lifted a bit. But one thing that I've seen a lot of people say, like as sort of like a summary of like, oh, here's what the previews say, is that there is less social stuff. And that's not really true. I mean, in a way it's sort of true, but I think people are kind of like misunderstanding or misinterpreting what they mean. So anyways, Fire Emblem Engage. Let me just start from the top. So this game kind of feels like an anniversary title, like a celebratory Fire Emblem series title, even though I believe Fire Emblem's like 30th anniversary was a couple years ago and it's not quite the 35th yet. So it's not really an anniversary title, but obviously you have the emblems, and these emblems are the main like core gimmick, if you will, of this game. And I don't mean gimmick in any derogatory way. Just it's the gimmick of the game are these emblems. So emblems there's 12 of them, and they're characters from past games. If you've been following along with the pre-release information, you kind of know who they are. There's like one from each major game. There's, you know, Marth, Roy, Celica, Ike, Micaiah, and so on. And as you progress through the game, you will basically gain these emblems, and they are basically an equipment, a ring that you can put on any character. And so when you put this on a character, what that means is that character they gain a couple of things. They gain a couple of new weapons that they don't really work like typical weapons. They gain a couple of new weapons that are like unique to that emblem character. For example, if you put Marth onto Alir, who's the main character of this game, he will gain access to a rapier. And if you've played Fire Emblem, you know that rapiers are basically like swords that are good against horseback. And so on and so forth. Every emblem character has these weapons that they put on, that they allow your character to use. You also gain a couple of new passive abilities. Recent Fire Emblem games, every character has their own little passive ability, and there's others that you can get based on their class. But emblems also add a passive ability. For example, Ike's is called, I think it's called Laguz Fiend. Laguz is creatures in his game. And that makes it so whoever is engaged with Ike, their avoid stat goes to 0, but their defense is raised by 50%, I believe. So what I'm getting at here is that the emblems will take your character and sort of modify them in ways. And since any character can equip any emblem, there's a lot of, combinations in play. And I think the reason why I started with this is I think this is kind of like, when all is said and done, kind of the core of this game that sets it apart from previous titles. Is very different.
For when you're engaged with an emblem, is there like a time limit or a turn limit on that, or is that okay?
Yeah. So when you engage, I believe the default time is 3 turns. But then as you are engaged with an emblem, there is a bond rank with that emblem. I hope I can say that. The embargo restrictions are very weird. They're even saying
the Nintendo Japan Twitter, the Nintendo Japan Twitter says that there's a bond rank.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a lot of things that the Nintendo Japan Twitter have said that we're not allowed to say. It's very weird. But so as you rank up your bond, the weapons that you get increase, the amount of time you can stay engaged lengthens. Like for example, with Ike, when you first engage with Ike, and let's just say you have a bond level of 1, the axe that you get is hammer, And if you play Fire Emblem, you know hammer is an
Okay.
axe good against armored enemies.
Right.
But if you reach a higher rank, I forget exactly which rank, you eventually get access to Irvan, which is Ike's
Oh.
axe. So Ike's axe is a very strong axe. And then if you reach, I believe, rank 15 with Ike, you get Ragnall, which Ragnall is basically like the sword in the Tellius games. So you get higher strength weapons. Your passives that you get are improved. For example, some of Marth's passives. Marth is really good at evasion. You get like, I think if you're max rank with Marth, if I remember correctly, you get like avoid plus 30, which is really good. That means like 30% more chance to dodge.
Basically, if you're like a Fire Emblem nerd, like from since the beginning, like you'll get a lot of like these like nice neat like references that like they're doing with these.
Micaiah is really, really good at healing. She's kind of like the healer emblem.
Mhm.
So I put Micaiah on a character who's a healer, and what that basically allows them to do is they can now use a heal staff from range, so like almost like a physics staff. Only heals are much cheaper than physics, and it gives their healing like an area of effect, like a
that's
cross.
good. Yeah.
So like if you can now, if you're engaged, if your healer is engaged with Micaiah, they can now heal like 5 units at once from a distance. Like that's pretty darn good. So I think when all is said and done, this is the part of the game that is kind of like make or break in terms of gameplay. I can't really sit here and say like, yes, this is absolutely better than it was before or worse than it was before. Is it better than like other mechanics like, I don't know, pair up or battalions or whatnot? I don't know.
But it seems so different that like
it's
it's hard to like it's hard to like to compare apples to tomatoes. It's like it's so
that's what gives this game its like unique feel.
Okay.
Now, in terms of like the game structure outside of combat, how it generally works is this, and this is sort of similar to Three Houses. You have a home base. It's called the Somnial. It's a floating island in the sky. It's kind of where you hang out, and the story reason for it's there is there really isn't one. There's just a floating island in the sky you can go to, and in between each battle, you can go back to this place. And as you progress in the game, like the facilities that are available at this base kind of expand. You get a shop. You get an armorer. You get a boutique, which is new, where you can actually change like the casual clothes of your characters. You get like a blacksmith. There's the arena. I think I can say that. I hope I can say that. You can only do a couple of battles in between each turn to like skirmish to spar against your friends. It's sort of like the tournaments in Three Houses. And you can fish. You can do tarot readings. There's a lot of things
you can do everything basically.
So what sets it apart from Three Houses is that a lot of the stuff is optional. You don't really have to do it. I know one thing that people have kind of poked fun at is this sort of ring polishing mechanic where you literally like take your cursor and you swing it back and forth on a ring to polish it. And like, what's the point of this? Well, to be honest, there actually really isn't one. What you actually effectively get for doing that is a very, very small bond up. So like, for example, if you have Alir polish Marth's ring, your bond with Marth will go up very slightly. It's almost so slight that it's just not worth it, like going to that place, going through the menu and doing it. And that's kind of true for a lot of the different things you can do at your base. You'll kind of learn as you kind of get into the routine that it's just like, man, this is just not worth like doing. You can do it in between every battle, but it's just kind of a waste of time.
You know what I think? Like when I think about like game design decisions like this, I think it's like it's like made for like to share on social media. Like you made this so you can share this like footage on social media, and that's it. That's that's kind of like the thing that kind of like bugs me about like some games these days. Like they'll tack on like these things on it, and you like there's like a certain thing about it that like irks me because like I feel like they just added this so like people could talk like just share this on social media, but it doesn't really add anything to like the base game itself, you know?
Yeah, like in pre-release context or coverage of this game, and you say like there's also this sort of gacha system with these other like minor rings that give you small stat ups. It kind of makes a splashy tweet or whatever where it's just like, hey, there's a gacha system, but like in practicality, I have barely used it. It's like almost pointless, especially so later in the game. This shouldn't be a spoiler. You get 12 emblem rings. You have all of them, and for the most part, 12 is about as many characters as you can bring into any one battle. I think there's a few you might be able to bring 14. And then like once you have the emblem rings, you'd much rather put those on your playable characters and these minor stat ups. So like these little minor rings that you like gotcha for, they're not really worth it in the end.
Yeah, it also feels like that's like it's also just catering to like, hey, if you played Fire Emblem Heroes, we got you because we know you like pulling gachas. So
Yeah.
and,
So there's this sort of there's this sort of kitchen sink approach to what you can do on your base. I've labeled some of these before. You can fish, you can cook, you can train in the arena, you can adopt animals, you can sort of like garden with them. You can do tarot readings. You can do this dragon Panzer Dragoon like mini game. You can train. I already said the arena. You can do the ring polishing. You can do the ring gacha. You can do these trials that I know have been mentioned. And it's just there's a lot. So when people say there's less social stuff, it's like, well, not really. It's all there. But the thing is that like in Three Houses, in between each battle, you had to do the lectures. And you had to do like if you remember correctly, like each character had like a motivation level and you could like train them on their stats and whatnot. I think all in all, the Three Houses like lecturing and combat, I think there's a pretty good synergy there, but that did mean that you couldn't ignore the lecturing and the training. You had to do it. Where in this case, the stuff you can do in the Somnial is much more optional. Like once you get into the routine of things, you might decide like there's no point to fishing, there's no point to doing the ring stuff, there's no point in doing the tarot reading or the dragon mini game or whatever. You can just kind of like do like a couple of small things, maybe do the skirmish in the arena and then go back to your next mission or next skirmish or next battle or whatever. So I think for people who play Three Houses and were just like, I could do without the lecturing stuff, then you might be happy because that's not there anymore, which I think is fair. I think that was kind of that game's kind of design and how it was put together, and it didn't need to be in any future game.
Yeah, when you speak about it like this, like it reminds me of My Time Marvel's Midnight Suns, where there's like just like
Right,
40% of
exactly.
that game where like you can just like completely ignore it, like exploring that island, that sanctuary, because a lot of it is like getting more like currency to decorate like your sanctuary, or like doing like these trials to get like a new outfit for your character or your allies and so forth. But you don't really need to do that all. Like all I did was like, okay, this shit is whack, so I'm just gonna go actually play the game and make progress because I enjoy the gameplay. So like if when you put it like this, and like a lot of it is optional, I'm like, okay, if this game allows you to just like focus on the gameplay and like I'm not really missing out on like doing like these stupid mini games for whatever, then like that might actually speak to me better than Three Houses if I can just like ignore that stuff.
Exactly. Another thing that I've seen people kind of talk about is story and characters. Now, I don't want to like spoil anything, and there's a lot you can't say anyway. It seems like a lot of previews say like the story is weaker or thinner, and I agree with that for the most part. The game is definitely more focused on like it's almost like the fan service of the series. Like, hey, here's Sigurd. You remember Sigurd, right? Well, actually, probably no, because it was never released in English. Yeah. But there's much more of a focus on like almost like the celebratory nature of it, and it does kind of feel that. So one thing I really, really, really appreciated about Three Houses, as well as like the Tellius games back, in the day, was those games were pretty concerned with the world that they were built in. And they did a lot of effort in terms of world building, character building. Characters come from different places, from different nations, from different stations. And, I think Three Houses at least did a pretty respectable job in building the world it was in and the characters that lived in it. This game, I'm just going to say that it's much less concerned with that. It's much more straightforward. It's much more just like, yeah, there are kingdoms and there are people from the kingdoms, but they're not really much more than just like, baseline, shallow, like this is this, and you just kind of move on from there. It's hard for me to even talk about it because it is thin. Okay. So it's a very straightforward game in that sense. And so if you really liked Three Houses because of the like world and the characters like as believable characters in that world, this game is a little bit more I guess I keep saying thin, but I think that is the best word to use, thin on that front. It's a bit more straightforward, a bit more streamlined in that sense. Also, one thing I've seen people mention about previews is that there is no romance. I will say that like a lot of people in the current day, they really got into Fire Emblem with Fire Emblem Awakening. And Fire Emblem Awakening was, in my opinion, when I think about Fire Emblem Awakening, it was almost like a matchmaker simulator where the whole like one of the big appeals to the game was kind of, you can put your fan fiction hat on and say like, who are my ships? Who am I going to pair with who?
Yeah, because they'll have unique dialogue with each other when like you
Yeah.
pair them together. It's like okay,
And
like,
you can kind of think of it
kind of
this. You can kind of think of this from like a fan fiction angle, or even from a mechanics angle. Like fan fiction angle is just like, I like this guy with this girl, and I'm going to pair them up. Or the mechanics angle is like, well, if it's this person, they're going to have this class and these abilities. It's almost like eugenics. It's kind of creepy.
You're not
wrong. So the supports in this game are also, there's not a lot of romance. There are a lot of supports, but the batting average mostly leans toward just like highlighting each character's gimmick. It is really focused on the gimmicks of the characters, which in Fire Emblem games, a lot of them characters have like a quirk or a gimmick to their character that may not be like believable as like a real human being, but it's just kind of fun and amusing maybe. But this game does lean heavy into that, like really heavy into that. I don't know how many times I can listen to Selene talk about tea, for instance, or Diamant talks about training every single time. It honestly does get a little bit old, but the supports in this game, they're lighter on like the character building and they're much lighter on the romance. It's really heavily focused on the gimmicks of the characters, which on a surface level can be amusing, but just kind of be aware that that's what it is.
It sounds like more and more to me like this game is just like you can just like mash X through everything except the gameplay. If you only care about gameplay, then like you're heavily rewarded with this.
It does kind of feel like almost you should approach it as you would like Birthright or Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, where Conquest had some really great gameplay and really great maps, but the story and characters are
dog shit.
What does Chow think of these? I know he has pretty heavy opinion on these, but yeah, it's probably not that bad, but it's just like it's not really the main draw to me.
I don't know if you can talk about this, but like just a general sense of like map design in this game. I don't know if you can give an opinion on that.
It feels pretty similar to Three Houses to me. There are a lot of maps where you can like. I hope this makes sense. There are a lot of maps that are open enough where almost like the best strategy is to turtle your group, your 10 units together, and then just kind of like blob around the map and wipe them out. There are a handful that are a little bit, more like here's a bridge here. So you can put like a tanky unit on the bridge and have your other units pelt them from behind your tank and whatnot. But Three Houses had a couple of those too. Yeah. I don't think... In my opinion, it doesn't seem like substantially better or substantially worse. Obviously there are some open maps and some more closed maps, but it's probably not as good as Conquest, which I think had some really great objectives. Yeah. There aren't very many maps that have objectives other than just defeat all the enemies. There aren't a lot of like escape maps. There's at least one. I'll spoil that. There's one map where your objective is just to escape. But it feels like to me it's about on the same level.
Okay.
I will say that for those who are worried that there is no romance, there is some, but it's just not to the same extent as like Awakening or even Three Houses. So it's there. It's just definitely not a focus this time.
It's not like a sex mini game like everything else has a mini game.
I'm not allowed to say.
Okay.
I'm joking. Is there anything else about like the game that people who haven't played it are like confused about? Because I have seen a lot of people just kind of really curious, just like, what is this game like? Because I guess some people have had like trouble sort of just trying to understand, like, with all the marketing, like, what exactly do you do in this game? Because they focus so much on those little Somniel mini games. Is there anything about the game that you guys are still just kind of wondering, like?
I guess my main question is about reclassing, because I'm a fossil. I really like when you have a limited, like, sorry, speaking English. I really like when you have a limited option of like, you can't just make everyone Myrmidons or everyone Swordmasters. I kind of like having a kind of an array of, you have these many generals and these many Pegasus Knights and this many mages, and you might have a little bit of say or a few branches, but I kind of just didn't like in Three Houses. It's like anyone can be anything. Sure, certain people are better than things than other, but just go to the list and just pick one. I don't know if you can say like how much freedom you have in Engage in terms of just reclassing.
This is one of those things I'm actually not 100% sure what I'm allowed to say or not. You can reclass.
According to the Japanese Fire Emblem Twitter, like there is a form of reclassing.
Okay,
in this game.
I'll just say it. I mean, is Nintendo listening to this? I'm sorry if I overstep my bounds. Anyways, so if you remember in Three Houses, what you would do I know different games have different methods of this, but in Three Houses specifically, being the most recent game, you basically had your student, like, you kind of tell them this is what you're aiming for, and then they'll like train up their proficiencies and weapons and whatnot to like be able to unlock that class in like an exam, and the higher they were, the higher the percentage chance of passing was. So in Three Houses, you could basically have anyone become anything. Obviously, whatever their starting proficiencies were at would make them more likely to pass certain classes or others. So they kind of had like a lean to them, where they would lean towards like, you know, Ferdinand was good as like cavalier type or like horseback type, you know, units, but you could also pretty easily train them to like a wyvern knight by giving them a couple of other, like by leaning them in that direction. And if you wanted to train them into a mage, you could, but it would take longer. This game has a similar sort of lean to it, where there is a proficiency system in this game. It is a little bit different than previous games. I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not. It's really hard. So characters have certain proficiencies. How you improve character proficiencies and weapons is also through the emblem system. So, for example, I believe it gets a little bit nuanced, so I don't remember exactly, but I believe if you level up a character and their bond with Marth, that they gain a sword proficiency. So if you want to train someone into a Myrmidon or a sword master and they don't have a sword proficiency, if you play with that character, say the axe person, there's an axe character named Panette. If you train them with Marth and they gain a sword proficiency and it's high enough, then you can use a master seal, which those existed in previous games, and they will be allowed to change into a sword master. But you have to train them up with an emblem to give them that sword proficiency first.
You have to like kind of basically like do like the manual grinding to get to that certain point.
Correct. However, if you want to train, I guess Panette is a pre-promoted class. She's a berserker, so she already is a berserker. If I take another unit, let's just say 1 second. Amber is a lance cavalier, so he can train up. If you upgrade him to paladin, you can do that right away. But you could train him up into anything else you wanted to if you gave him the right emblems to give him the right proficiencies and whatever you're trying to train him into. So yes, you can reclass, but there is, similar to Three Houses, a lean where certain characters will basically by default be able to translate to one promoted class, but you can lean them other ways with a little bit of effort, which I think is a fair compromise. I kind of went the old school fossil route, as Brian would say, and I just kind of trained up each unit into the kind of like the class they're kind of disposed towards. I'm sure once the game is out and people do like the theory crafting or whatnot, people might realize like, oh, if you train up this character with this emblem and get them into this unit, that actually works really, really well. And like I said, that's kind of how I actually started this topic. Is I think that's probably the most interesting part of the game, is sort of this tactical combining. It's almost like the pair-up system in a sense. It's kind of like a mix between pair-up or battalions in other games, where you're kind of comparing or combining a unit with an emblem, and then based on, you know, the unit's abilities, the emblem's abilities and weapons, and what the class they are, you can come up with, you know, some pretty cool combinations. For example, Ike makes a really good tanky emblem. So if you put Ike onto Rosado, who is a flyer, who is also useful in axes, they can kind of tank but also move quite fast because they're on a flying unit. So that works out pretty well. And so on and so forth. I've already given a couple of examples for that. So that's basically the preview of Fire Emblem Engage. I at the very least, I hope for those listening, that kind of gives you a better, I guess, know what to expect. Because you know, every Fire Emblem game is a little different, and this has its own flavor and its own strengths and weaknesses, I think. So I think it'll be most interesting. It'll be most interesting to see people who jumped on with Awakening or with Three Houses, what they think of this one, for a couple of reasons. One, it is mechanically a different sort of game. You know, it's kind of focusing on different things with different kind of flavor to it. But two, a lot of the fan servicey emblem stuff, I don't like how much will that click with them. Like, who is this Leaf person? I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's gonna be interesting to see, like how like newcomers through even Awakening, like, you know, how they respond to this. Because I think for people who have already, like, you know, like me, you, and Chow, like, who played a lot of like the older Fire Emblems, like we kind of like, I think we have a good idea what to expect now from what you've said. It's like, okay, like for me, like as long as a Fire Emblem game has like really fun gameplay, then I'm willing to put up with a lot of bullshit.
Like we stomached the crappy story from Fates.
I mentioned this earlier if you were here. So
yeah,
Yeah, if we could stomach that, we can stomach any gameplay loops from Fire
that's
Emblem.
true. Actually true.
Well, it sounds like it's kind of suited to your kind of preferences, Adam, because you really like the spinning plate RPG where you have all these mechanics, you've got these classes and emblems, and it feels like you're less high on the story aspect, but you kind of that's less important to you.
I
usually
don't come to this genre for like the story itself. So it's just that I'm not really feeling the story or the characters. I mean, I practically have beaten the game. I'm right before the final level, but that's not really the strong suit to me. And where I thought Three Houses was pretty respectable in that regard. I will say also one last thing. I know some people were kind of mixed on the fact that Three Houses had multiple branches. First of all, it just makes it a more of a time commitment if you wanted to do multiple routes, but also some people felt like they would do a route and they kind of felt like they got like an incomplete picture. It wasn't satisfying in some way. This game is just one route, no branches, no decisions in that sense, which to some people that might be a breath of fresh air. Like, thank God, just play the game start to finish. So there's that too. So if you really didn't like Three Houses because of its branching system, at least that's not here. So
I didn't realize people felt so strongly about the brand. I
know at least one person who didn't like that, or like Fates has the multiple routes in a way. Also,
I mean, Fates also had you like dish out additional money for the other routes too.
The Pokemon route.
That's so sick.
So yeah.
So obviously, when does this release? On the 27th?
20th, I think.
Yeah, 20th sounds right.
Okay, I was a week late. Yeah, the 20th. So in 2 weeks, we'll be able to talk about this game on our release, I guess.
Yeah, format. I'm excited to try it out. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Like, I'm still surprised at like how much of like a big graphical leap is over Three Houses.
Oh,
like,
I didn't mention that. It is by far the best looking Fire Emblem, and also like battle animations are pretty good. I mean,
awesome. Yeah.
There's enough of it that it's almost just eventually you're going to turn those animations off. Eventually you are, but they are pretty good.
Well, thank you, Adam, for sharing your preview thoughts on Fire Emblem Engage. We will be talking about this again in a couple of weeks when it releases, and I'm sure a few of us will be playing through it. I feels kind of unfair to it a little bit, but I'm like, well, I hope I can get rid of this. I guess kind of betrays my mindset there. I hope I can kind of clock this one early just to get it kind of out of the way before February lands. So I'm like, sorry, Fire Emblem Engage, I gotta be efficient with you before we get into February. But maybe we'll be surprised because a lot of the gameplay mechanics that you've just talked about sound really engaging, pun intended. So the second game that we're going to be talking about is one that, at least in the circles that I am in, has been getting a lot of word of mouth, and we've been getting a few replies and comments on our website about covering this game. This game came out in early December, an indie RPG inspired by 16-bit JRPGs of yesteryear, and that is Chained Echoes. So this released in early December. It is the debut project for indie developer Matthias Linda, published by Deck 13, and this has been getting a lot of look in. And a few people have asked where it is on our RPG of the Year awards, where it is just in general, coverage for it. Of course, it just kind of released at a very unfortunate time, being a couple weeks before the winter holidays. So I grabbed this, downloaded it on my Steam Deck, and I basically made Harvestella and Chained Echoes my two holiday break games. In terms of, I wanted to make sure I got a decent look in at Chained Echoes so I could speak to it on this podcast today.
How did you get on this game? I'm curious.
I'm in Act 3. I'm about 24 hours in. Okay. I've heard that the game, if you're pretty exhaustive, is like 40 hours. So a long but not obscenely Persona long JRPG. And there's a lot that I want to talk about on this game, but at a high level, this game, it is really good.
I'll be honest up front and say I think the further that you get into this game, the further that I got into this game, the more I disliked it, and I'm pretty. I do not like the game. After playing it,
I knew that you had mentioned that as you got further in that you weren't as high on it. So I kept waiting for is this the thing that Josh didn't feel? Maybe it was this, or maybe it was this. And there are a few things I do have a few nitpicks, but they don't.
Let's establish the premise first. Let's establish the premise first. What this is about.
So the premise is that you are on a fantasy world that is kind of like entering. It's not quite steampunk. It's more like mage punk kind of setting where there is some technology, but the idea is that this is the seventh age of this universe, and at a high level, it sounds kind of very archetypal, but the power of magic has dwindled over the years, over the generations. The amount of magic that the different races are able to utilize has diminished, and you learn throughout the game why that is. However, there have been certain factions at play that have been trying to manipulate how magic is conducted in this world to try to re-energize it and utilize it in order to prevent kind of the destruction of the world. And the way that this works is that in this, it kind of has a very Final Fantasy VII live stream vibe, where when a person dies, their ether, their soul, their magic tendency kind of goes back into this pool called the maelstrom, and then it is kind of recycled and reborn into a new body and a new soul. However, the amount of people, the population, has continued to increase with a fixed amount of magic. Therefore, magic is dwindling, and this has a lot of different like repercussions throughout the world. The two main repercussions is that some people are born as shells where they don't get like sufficient magic to have a soul, and then the other repercussion is that in certain circumstances, certain people have almost like a magical memory of their previous existence, and that's kind of a very key component of the story. So for instance, this main character, his name is Glenn. He was born kind of in a prison camp, but somehow he knows how to read, and he has knowledge that he really shouldn't. It's like, how do you know this, Glenn? And it's because he, for some reason, has a history from his previous soul, his previous existence, that you kind of learn has been manipulated to be who he is today. And there's a few other characters that have kind of a very similar mindset.
I'll just say that kind of makes sense with the game's title now, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, Echoes is a mechanic. Capital E Echo is a mechanic in the game, and a key part of the story. This game takes a lot of very clear inspiration from a lot of different places and several games I had played. And then when Adam was watching me play it, he was like, "Oh, that works kind of like this." So, for instance,
it's not even the key inspirations, right? This to me, this game feels like a Frankenstein of references that like it doesn't have an identity of its own because it's trying to make so many references to like other RPGs.
Yeah, so I had like a mental list, and I think I'm up to like 7 or 8 games long. So
oh my god, it's even more than that. it's like 20 at this point.
All right, so it has collectibles that are basically lifted from the Xenoblade series. They're like floating orbs that you pick up, and you get a bonus if you get all of them in an area. And then it has the bazaar system like Final Fantasy XII, where you'll sell loot drops, and if you sell like a certain combination of them to the store, they'll have a deal for you that you can use to buy a new piece of gear. It has early on in the story, there's a section that's like Final Fantasy VI where your party gets split up, and it's like, whose path do you want to follow first? I already mentioned the Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, they have Chrono Trigger, the amusement park type deal where they give you coins to around that whole thing. Yeah, the Chrono Cross like kind of like leveling system with the SP type stuff. You kind of have the reward board list, like kind of like like when you get a chain of like objectives together. That reminds you, I think it was like FF12 that did a similar thing.
It reminds me a little bit of the FF12 license board, but it's more rewarding you with SP and money rather than stats.
Yeah, it's more the presentation that
yeah, but the presentation is very much like a license board.
Yeah.
Adam, I haven't played this game, but Adam said that the skill system is very similar to like a Wild Arms 2.
Yeah. Then you just have like locations, like there's like when you set up like camp early on, like that whole map right where they first set up camp there is straight lifted from Seiken Densetsu 3. There's like a abandoned castle section that's like from Dragon Quest 3 or 4. I forgot which Dragon Quest.
Well, there's a section that is very clearly, and so many things have referenced this that I don't even know if it's almost like its own thing now.
There's like not even like referencing like the prologue's name is the Alpha, not the Omega, which is from Xeno, referencing a play on Xenogears. But there's not even referencing like there at a certain point in the story you'll start like piloting these mechs, and then and then you can put color schemes on them, and they're very much referencing like mechs like goddams, like the Gundam color scheme. You have the Atom 1, Atom 2, Atom 3, that's Ava. You have a color scheme that's just called Barbados, and it looks like fucking Barbados from Iron Blooded Orphans. It's just like I said, there's like so much to this game that like if I my friend and I have been like discussing about this. I feel like the more you've played older classic JRPGs, it depends on how much you're willing to like are okay with like references to a game. Like for me, I like when games like are inspired by something and like do references here and there. I don't like when the whole product is like just a whole mishmash Frankenstein of like references. Like, oh yeah, I understood that reference. I understood that reference. It's like it just I can't think of like many things about this game that it does like originally. And like then there are like narrative beats about the story that like really, really, really irk me. That like I don't understand like how people think like this game is like written or well or how they could like the story. Then there's like key flaws to the story that like I don't understand how like people like this game like from a storytelling perspective as well.
There was a couple of story beats later on that I thought were a bit silly, but they didn't really like color my interpretation too much. For instance, there's something that occurred with the Sova people later that I felt was kind of unnecessary. But it was just kind of like, that was strange. But it didn't really sour me that much. I was like, that's not how I would have done that. But
I don't like that they kind of like do an off-screen genocide of a certain type of people, and then like they never really kind of touch that upon again because that was like a major beat for a certain party member. I don't like that a certain party member like they kind of like do shock value for this certain party member's like motivations later, where like he had a sibling that got like sexually assaulted and like is now in a coma. And like and that like barely like it barely fucking matters. Didn't even give her a name, Like the only thing you know about like that sibling is like that's what happened, and like they don't really kind of give it that sort of like levity that it should. It's kind of more like put out there as shock value to like spur this like party member to what they do, moving forward. But it's kind of more like a narrative like excuse more so than like kind of treating it like in a more like serious kind of way. You have a certain party member where like most of their backstory is like kind of done on the spot when like a certain part like way later into the game, and it's kind of done in a slapdash manner as well, because like this character's like knows a lot about the church. I wonder why they know a lot about the church, and then when their narrative beats happen, like it's kind of like like done in there. Like it's like it's never really placed into focus the way that should. It's kind of like the Balthier equivalent, except this character's way less charming than Balthier in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm just saying that like I can understand why people like this game, but to me, there's like a game has to have like some originality put into like their what their ambition is, like I need to see like what the creator is like aiming for, not just the creator being like, oh, I like this JRPG, I think I'm just gonna put this thing from a JRPG that I played, and then that's that, because there are just so many things that like are kind of like done in this game, and like it doesn't feel cohesive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like the stagger debuff, for example. Like it's like given to you as a tutorial, but it's only ever relevant in like the early, like a small part of the early game and like one other small section of the game, and you never see that stagger thing again because I don't know if the developer forgot that they got a debuff or that had that. It feels like a lot of these things are just kind of like they're put in and then they're forgotten like at a certain point. That I think the thing that really annoys me too on top of this is like there are just like certain design decisions about this game that like the map design in this game, like in Act 1, is like fine, and I was okay with it. As soon as you get the mechs, map design and like just goes down the drain, because at a certain point, at the end of Act 1 into Act 2, you get like these mechs, and out in the field, you can call your mech, and like there's like two modes to like this mech traversal. There's like a hover mode and a fly mode. Hover mode, you can still go around, you'll still hit obstacles. But you can still, kind of move around and bypass some environmental objects. In fly mode, you go all the way up. You don't interact with any enemies. You can go freely explore the map, and so forth. On that, and there'll be some like battles you want to go into mech mode, and so forth in that. But that like the whole reason why that there's even like modes in the first place like is kind of stupid, because like when you first get like the mech, for example, on like a certain place, there's like crates in your way, like you're like on an airship, and it's like, why can't like my mech just like go over like these crates? It doesn't fucking make sense. So I have to go out of my mech to go and like go through some crates to get to a chest, when like I'm like, I have a fucking mech that can fly. I don't know if I can just not go over them. And then like for certain parts of like the map, you can't just like freely land on any part of the map when you're your mech, because the narrative decision, or like the story or lore reason for this is because there's exposed weak points on the mech like underneath it. So obviously it cannot land like on enemies, like, so that makes sense because there's exposed weak, but it also cannot land on water, and it cannot land on like high grass because there's exposed weak points. It's like, what the fuck? And it's so like, and that it becomes immediately annoying in the first map, that like full map that you like visit, like it's like a snowfield when you first get these mechs, because that whole region, it just designed to like piss you off, of like, there's like this whole like layer of the snow covered with high grass, so that means you cannot like, you know, land on any of this, only at this certain part, because you have to go weave your way around the map after you land here to go here because of the high grass. And it's like, it's like, it's so ridiculous, right? And it's like, this doesn't feel like fun. Like, it doesn't really capture like the fun of like having mech in the first place. You know, there's not even going to like the stupid battle mechanics over the mechs, to be honest. When you get a mech, like we'll go over that later. So it's a lot of like little things that add up that like just piss me off, and I'm just like, why did you even do this then? Why did you even do this?
The mech traversal, I do admit, is a bit contrived, but I kind of like it from a puzzle aspect, where it's just like, how do I navigate through here? Oh, I got to get off my mech to squeeze through this cave. Then I can get on my mech and
fine if you
land
want to do
here.
puzzles for that, but but the reason behind it is so stupid.
Yeah, the reasoning is contrived. I do give you that, where it's just like, I can't land on the water, but if I land on the shore, then I can hover over the water. It's like, why can't I just go from flying to hovering over the water? But
yeah,
I kind of thought of it more of as just as a puzzle mechanic. Oh, I see that chest. How do I get there? Oh, if I land here, then I can go through this enemy, and then through this. Here's a spot here I can call my mech, and then aha, I'm rewarded. And I do like.
If I'm gonna be honest with you, Brian, like I was perfectly fine with like you know, it's another like, you know, indie RPG that like is inspired by like class. It's like, okay, like this is kind of neat what they're going for here and there. But once I saw people like kind of like giving this praise like the second coming of Christ, I'm like, I don't know, you know, I don't know about that. Like it's certainly like a very ambitious JRPG, and I really like the pixel art style for it. But you know, when you really break down the game from like on a molecular level and like start thinking about things about this game, it's like to me, the only way I can like reason it out in my head and like try to understand where people are coming from, like, is like, you probably haven't played like many RPGs before or something for certain people, right? So I'm just like, because for me it's just like if the more references it keeps spitting out at me, the more I'm just like, I don't need you to keep on doing this, dude. I want you to like have one single original thought, please.
I don't know, the way that you make it sound like this is like the Ready Player One of RPGs.
Almost. You're not fucking wrong. You are not fucking wrong. Holy shit, that's so good. God damn, fuck, I didn't think about that. You're not wrong.
It's just nothing but references to this. Like, hey, did you get this? Did you get this?
Yeah, and it never stops. That's the thing. Like, I kind of wish it just stops, and it doesn't. And it's just like, man, fuck. Sorry, go, Brian.
I mean, I honestly don't know where to take it from there.
I'm so sorry, but it's like when it comes to like when talking about this game, it's just like, like you're almost there. You're almost there. I just need you to like do something like that on your own, please. I guess and also the thing. So I guess we'll go to the battle system, right? There's the turn-based RPG, and they kind of do this kind of conceptually neat thing on paper where there's like a bar at the upper left corner, and like there's like three phases of this bar. There's like an orange bar, a green bar, and a red bar. As people take turns, they're filling up this gauge, and the main goal is you want to keep that cursor within the green zone, because in the green zone, you'll do more damage, you'll take less damage, and the cost of your skills is reduced. So you want to keep it in that green zone as much as possible. When it goes over to the red zone, those bonuses are applied to your opponent, where you'll do less damage.
You basically take
you'll-
like double damage.
Yeah, you'll
It
do
might not be double, but
yeah.
you take a shit ton of damage.
You take a shit ton of damage, and then like the normal orange zone is kind of like just like, you know, everything's at normal values. So you're trying to ramp up to the green zone and stay within that green zone as much as possible. There are certain turns and types of skills. Sometimes, like when you're in the green zone and it's a character's turn, a skill might be highlighted orange. So that means if you use that skill, you'll turn the gauge back, the cursor back, to make sure. So it's kind of like an insurance that, like, hey, if you're getting close to red, you might want to use this skill to turn the cursor back. There's also like minor. There's also other options you can do in battle that'll do a little bit of like, it'll turn it back. Like when you defend in battle, they'll turn that cursor back just a tiny bit. When you switch to to like your secondary character, because you can have up to 8 people in your party, but only 4 of them deployed at a time. So you can like kind of duo people together, kind of like link them together, so you can when you switch to another character from your backline, it'll also turn that cursor back a little bit. In action, this mechanic kind of becomes annoying, because there'll be some points where, like, okay, I've been going through characters' turns, and like a good chunk of them haven't had any skills highlighted in orange, so haven't had like a chance to like turn their cursor back. Then all of a sudden, you'll get to a character that that'll have like a skill in orange, but it's a completely useless skill that may not serve you anything on this turn. So, like, for example, there's this character, Sienna. She's like your main DPS of the group, but she's also a thief, so she has the skill to like steal from enemies. The game already gives you an indicator of like whether an enemy can be stolen from. So you don't have to like determine whether you can steal from an enemy or not. It'll give you like a green check mark or an X on whether you can steal from this enemy or not, or whether you'll get anything from this enemy anyway. So there'll be at times, for example, where you're close to getting this gauge to red, but it's Sienna's turn. You want to do big damage, but then you'll see that if you do big damage, you'll go over to the red. So, but her skill Pilfer to steal from an enemy is in orange. So it's like, okay, well, I have to take this turn to use Pilfer on like an enemy that can't be stolen from, just to dial that gauge back down. And so in action, like, you're kind of forced to like take some like dead turns to like just dial that gauge, which is like, you know, kind of annoying.
For me, I've actually found that level of quote unquote inconvenience to be actually quite compelling, where I was like, okay, I'm almost out of my green range and going to go into the red range if I do an attack. So when I'm kitting out my skills and my units, I'm like, all right, I want to make sure I have coverage. I want to make sure that I give a magic attack to Glenn. I want to make sure that I give a buff to Senna. I want to give a physical attack to Victor, just so that on their turn, if I need to, I can have them dial back the gauge. Or, okay, if I have her do this attack, I'm going to go into the red zone and take a lot more damage, but I might clear out a couple of the enemies on the way, so I'll be fine. So I actually really kind of enjoyed sort of that give and take, where it's like, okay, it's Sienna's turn. If I have her attack, I'm going to go into the damage phase. I forget what it's called, the red part of the bar. However, I'm pretty confident she can at least take out 2 of these 3 enemies. So maybe I'll go ahead and do that anyway and just risk it. Or I can play it safe and be like, all right, let's dial down the bar and I'll take the dead turn, as you said, just to be more cautious.
I mean, so I can see like, people I can see why you like, why people might find that compelling. To me, it's just like I kind of wish that like it was more evenly balanced on like what, like, when people are able to like dial the gauge back down, because you could definitely plan to do it as much as you can, but at certain points you will be forced to take a dead turn and be like, all right, I guess like, it's something that's inevitably going to happen, and something that you can't plan for. But for me, it's just like, it kind of feels like it feels kind of dumb for me, for like in an RPG, for like to have a character take a turn in a turn-based RPG, and like they just can't do nothing except like play by the rules of the like a certain gauge, because that's kind of like the fundamentals of the game. It's like dead, you have to play by the dead turns. It's not even like challenging at that point, because like at a certain point in this game, like the combat kind of solves itself, and you have a strategy, and like once you exploit the strategy, it's like you're kind of like going through the motions. Like there's like very very little about this game after you kind of like understand like the importance of buffs and debuffs in this game, like and how overpowered that they are. That like nothing else ever fucking matters in combat, because once you do the strategy, because once you've solved it, you're just kind of doing this again and again and again, and it will work for like 99% of encounters. Because you're just like for example, like there's like a special a special meter that like you can activate on a character, on a specific character, because every character has like their own unique special ultimate attack and so forth. Some might be like supports, some might be like doing a lot of damage and so forth. But once you figure out, hey, Glenn has like the fucking most OP like special like the special ultimate skill, like nothing fucking matters, because like but when you use like a special, you also like crank down the gauge by a lot too.
It's like a limit break basically, or
Yeah, it's a
whatever you
limit,
want to call it.
yeah, it's like a limit break. So like Lens is like an AoE to all enemies, and they'll take a debuff to attack, defense, like, and all like 2 other like stats are debuffed for like 3 turns or something.
It's attack down, magic down, defense down, magic defense down.
Yeah,
it's basically Arn's 4 breaks all in one.
pretty much, and it's like it's available to you like as soon as like you get the thing, and then it's just one of those things that like I like when in RPGs when you're forced to like adopt different strategies like at certain parts of the game because of like the options, or like the limited parties, or like there's something about the enemy design or something about the encounter design. And it's like, but once you find like a certain setup in this game, like it's like that's not something like I looked up. It's like oh, okay, these are like really really handy. And like once I like saw that, and like it's just like, oh, okay, well I guess that's really it for combat, and the combat never really got like exciting. But that's just me. Once again, there's just my experience.
I think people will find different strategies based on how they pair their character with their class emblem. So you unlock different class emblems, which gives them like a stat boost. For instance, if it's a cleric, it gives them like extra mind and extra TP, which is like the MP of this game, and healing spells. So you can pair basically a character's inherent skill abilities with the class abilities.
I have a question for you. The cleric class emblem, who did you give it to?
I gave it to Victor.
Okay.
And
ask anyone else in this game who they gave that cleric class emblem to. I bet you 90%, if not 99% of them, will say Victor. Okay. Is that really a choice, or is that just like I feel like this game has like it gives you the illusion of choice, but like everyone has the same answers, because that's like that's
wait, why Victor?
Because Victor is like a bard. He buffs, but so he has high magic and high mind. Mind is the stat. It's like magic defense, but also does healing power. And the game has a bespoke healer named Amalia, but she just is like, if your team is topped off, she's far less useful. Where if your team is topped off and doesn't need a heal, Victor can either cast spells or buff attack or defense.
Yeah, so basically, the one weakness of Victor is like he can't do an AoE heal, but the cleric class emblem gives him each cleric class or each class emblem gives you like 2 abilities, and one of the abilities on the cleric class emblem is a heal all spell, which is like the last piece of the puzzle for Victor to like really make him shine. So like that cleric class emblem, I bet you over 90% of the players who have ever touched Chained Echoes have paired Victor with that cleric class emblem. I'm like, and I don't think there's really like necessarily like a better use out of that class emblem. I think everyone found
who did you give Vampire to?
I gave it to Glenn.
Yeah, same here. So maybe you're on something.
So
the nice thing about these emblems is that they do have kind of like a Final Fantasy IX aspect to them, where once you master them, you can keep the skill, and you don't have the stat buff, but you can keep the skill. So I had Glenn. The Vampire has a passive where he uses up HP whenever he attacks, but increases his attack by like 15%. And so I gave him that passive, mastered it out, and now I have it on, I think, what's her name? The martial artist optional character.
I forgot her name off the top of my head.
Minka.
Yeah,
the Blue Mage's granddaughter. But yeah, she's another big physical attacker. So I'm like, all right, I'll give her the Vampire emblem. So because losing a little bit of HP per attack, but in exchange for a huge damage buff is not that big a deal. So I think that's one of the more powerful passives.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
like I said, like I can see why people like this game. I just don't understand the a lot of the like the rave behind this game, I guess, after getting my hands on it. But that's just me. Like that's just the way that my mind works. Like, when I'm like thinking about playing these games, especially games that like really try to like, tap into like like, oh, the classic JRPG of the history. It's like, okay, are you doing anything to evolve the formula or like give your own original spin on it? It's like, no. It's like, all right, okay. The one thing this game does do well is, one, the soundtrack at some point is really good. Like like the emblem fights, like the OST for those battles is really good, and the turtle race, at the very beginning of the game, like that festival Chrono Trigger type thing, like when
Mhm.
you can bet on like a turtle to win the race, and like as soon as that turtle race starts, it's like a like heavy death metal jam playing as the turtles are racing. That's really good because that was very unexpected and very good. So yeah, other than that, I don't know. I don't know. I guess maybe the magic of this game is kind of lost on me. Um, when I think about like what I like and dislike about this game.
I think the most silly reference that there was you find a creature who looks like a Link to the Past Zora,
Mhm.
and he's like, why did she marry a river? They're not called Zoras, of course. They're like, oh, don't they know I live in a river and not a lake? Basically, the difference between
Yeah.
Lake Zoras and River Zoras, or
Right.
things
Right.
like
Right.
that. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I see what they're doing
Mm.
here. So that at that point, I was kind of rolling my eyes. Like, that's not even, I don't know. This game is not Zelda-like in really any other way, other than a top-down view, I suppose. But they decided to throw that in there. I thought it
Yeah.
was a little bit silly and a bit
Mm.
cheeky. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess it's been a while since we've had a game on the podcast where two people feel kind of on opposite sides of it.
I'm
So
sorry, Brian.
no, it's no problem. I mean, one thing I don't pride myself on this, but you see the sort of things where it's like, how dare Game Informer or whoever give this game that I loved a low score, or what are they thinking giving this game that I hated a high score? It's like, people have opinions. How dare they? So I don't know. Like that again. Whenever any review is written, it's the opinion of one person who has different
Yeah.
preferences and different things that they rate highly. Adam, I don't know what Adam might score Fire Emblem Engage, but someone who doesn't care about romance or the lack of it might score that game higher than
I
someone who
hate
does,
romance in general.
and
You're
be
right.
like, where is it? So a couple of things for Chained Echoes that I do want to call out. I
Yeah.
do think that the art style is really good. It's it
Yeah.
avoids the Aiden Chronicles Rising sort of very cheap look. It has
I
a
like the
more
environmental like graphics for sure. Like there's a lot of care and detail put into like especially like vistas in the game and like and in-house like decorations. Like there's a lot of like great sprite work in there.
yeah.
The only thing that I did wish is I wish there was like another like portrait for like expressing emotion when like people are talking about each other because they only have like one portrait image when they're speaking to each other. They don't have like a happy portrait image or a sad portrait image like conveying like they're have that one because maybe that like constraints of development, especially solo development, you know. Um, but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and like for instance, there's like the main character Glenn, like his sprite, his hair is like two different pieces. So like
Mm.
the front of his hair is a slightly different sprite than the back of his head,
Yeah,
and so when he runs, it looks like it's flopping up and down a little bit, which is
yeah,
it's very
neat. It's
small,
good.
but
It's good.
it's little attention to detail like that. Where I think this game, like I actually kind of prefer this art style more than like the HD 2D thing where it's smeared in bloom and depth of field and stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I think this Ys Stars is a bit more clean, and I do agree. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it a weakness, but the portraits are kind of standard fare. They look fine. They fit the art style, but I think the pixel art of like the of the environments and the overfield view is better than the portraits themselves, which are just fine. But yeah, it's a meaty game. It's got a lot of side objectives. It does have a lot of references. So depending on how you feel about that, take it or leave it. I guess I'm sure there's tons that I missed, though there were tons that I picked up to my credit. Josh said,
I
depending
mean,
on how many RPGs you played.
yeah,
So maybe I haven't
could be
played
a little bit
enough.
of hate on that aspect, but no, I mean, no,
So
it's just like it's like one of those things that like once you understand that like this game is like loves to reference, you're just kind of like more keen about it, I guess.
I will
It's
say
not.
though that the similar game that I played in the last year was that Symphony of War game, and that
Mhm.
game didn't have as many references, but it had an absolute pardon my language. I feel so bad like calling out indie developers, but it just had a very bad story. It was not good at all. Where this story has a lot of basically archetypal callbacks to things that have been done before, but it's doing things like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and Castle in the Sky, and things that are well regarded. So is it playing Parakeet? Yeah, a little bit, but it's better than the original story that I played last year on another indie RPG. I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, that doesn't really mean like like just because it does that doesn't mean like it's like automatically worse. Obviously, like the execution is everything as well.
Right. So, but I think the transition between acts was a bit weird. There's a section where Glenn lives on his own for like 3 months, like comes and goes in like 10 gameplay minutes, which I'm like, they could have. I actually kind of wish they kind of extended that out a bit, where
Me
like this
too.
is an interesting idea, but make me play as this make this an hour of gameplay.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
and then pull the twist, because they kind of introduce a concept and then 10 minutes later, like, okay, on to act 2. Here you go. I'm like, oh, but I was actually kind of enjoying that. You should have
that's
dwelled
like a really
in it.
interesting plot point, and then like you just I think that's the thing that's a really frustrating thing about the game for me. Again, it's like you have a really interesting plot point, but then like you're refused to elaborate on it, or like it's so surface level that it's hard to care.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chained Echoes released in December, so it'll be kind of a this year coverage for RPG Site. I don't know if anyone's lined up to review it or if we even will, but at least we're able to give it a look in on the podcast here, because I know some people are wondering, like, where are you discussing this? Well, hopefully you got a little bit of back and forth on this.
People are like, here. As long as Josh never reviews it, then we're good.
Well, I mean, we've had games, I can't think of a specific one offhand, but we've had games where someone who's not on our podcast reviews it, and then we're kind of like, well, we don't really feel that way about it. The 5 of us here. So it happens. So this is one of the times it actually is 2 podcast participants. So I do appreciate that just in and of itself. The other game that I played, I believe I have this one set up next. The other game that I played over the break, and I'll keep this one a bit shorter because I did discuss it a fair bit on the end of the year podcast, is Harvestella. So this is a game, obviously, that came out in November as a Rune Factory-like, published by Square Enix and developed by Livewire. This game I kind of picked up on a whim. There was a lot of November releases. I picked up Pokemon, barely played it. I picked up a few other games. Like I think I just got through Star Ocean 6 by the time this rolled around. I was like, all right, I'll just dive into Harvestella, just because I've never played Rune Factory, I've never played Harvest Moon, but I just want to see what it's like. Harvestella, the way that it was marketed, made it feel like this really comfy, cozy, casual thing that you just kind of you do a few days, make some crops, sell some stuff, upgrade your farm, raise some chickens, raise some sheeps, and it just seemed like this really low-key thing, but it ends up feeling way more like a traditional, almost by the numbers JRPG than I expected, and it almost feels like something out of Nier or Nier Automata in the way that
it's a good or bad thing, like a expectations versus reality.
I think for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of preconceptions of what a good farming sim is like, having not played Stardew Valley, having not played whatever Chow's favorite Rune Factory game is. So I guess it's one of those things where it's like, I didn't have expectations to be subverted or upended. So I guess I was just kind of happy to roll with the punches, but I could see potentially someone playing this and being like, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't even how the game's marketed. Remember, I forget, did this game come out? Was it initially shown in a Nintendo Direct? It was either initially shown in a Nintendo Direct or early shown in a Nintendo Direct. And it's like this very slow narrator being like, harvest crops, tend to your farm.
Right.
And it is that a little bit, but so I'm going to spoil some plot points for Harvestella because I don't think I can communicate what this game is like without doing that. So go to the next timestamp if you want Harvestella to be a blind experience for you. You're first tipped off when you are doing the character story for the engineer character of the game. His name is like Hein. You go to Hein. He's building a submarine, and you go to the bottom of the ocean, and you find a torn up, no jokes, American flag. And you're like, what the shit?
What?
And you eventually learn that the Earth basically succumbed to magical overpopulation, so to speak. They're basically going to die out. it has a very like ecological slant to it, and also a little bit mystical. There's like this Genova like force called like the Red Queen that was poisoning the earth. So what the humans of the earth did was they created an AI race to then basically find a new earth, and they call this one Re-Gaia. So old earth is like old Gaia, and then the new earth is Re-Gaia, and create like a new population of humans. And they call them Cains and Abels. So Cains are like the original. There's a lot of like biblical.
You gotta be fucking shitting me! Holy shit!
So Cains are like the original human race, and Abels are the new like 99.99% similar reborn human race, because to give them a second chance, and like this AI overseers. So the Cains created the AI, which then essentially created the Abels, and then basically you learn that the world that you're on is a kind of a recreation of old Earth, only having like genesis out of a mechanical, artificial means. And then you find like these old research facilities that are like 1,000 years old, and you kind of learn like a certain party members who had lost their memories are actually like a different species of human, and you eventually, due to some contrivances in the stories, you're positioned in a place where it's like, well, you have to pick one human race or the other. Which one are you going to kill? And eventually, you basically say like, I'm going to save both, because it's a JRPG and you're the hero. But this is a farming sim, and I'm just like, what are you doing? What is this? But it's nothing super novel. It's nothing that's out there. But I just wasn't expecting it out of this game.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like the story ambitions don't fit the gameplay implementation. So the gameplay is really quite simple. It's an action RPG. You only have one basic attack move, and then you can basically hotkey 4 special abilities based on the class. Sometimes these special abilities are all attacks. Sometimes you get like 1 buff and 3 attacks or whatever. And yes, that's the entire game in terms of combat. It's like if I'm playing as the samurai, I have like a single target swing. I've got a swing that gives them an armor down debuff. I got a swing that pulls in enemies, and then I got a buff that raises my critical chance. That's their 4 abilities. And
does this game delete your save after you're done with it or something?
No, it doesn't do anything like that. It does have like a significant post game where you fight God, Shock basically, or something that is essentially God. But you basically you have like this arc of types, this arc ARC, or is it ARK? This ship of hibernating human bodies that was originally sent to repopulate the Earth, the Re-Gaia, but it can't sustain both human populations. That's why you have to pick one or the other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then one of your characters who lost her memory learns that she is a Cain and not an Abel, so she is an original human, not a Re-Gaia human. And so she's like, I need to fight for my people. They have all their faith in me. And you're like, no, but we're your people now, or whatever. And eventually you learn to accommodate both.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a far cry from the harvest these cucumbers and sell them at the market to upgrade your chicken coop or whatever.
That's how you really populate the Earth, baby.
Man, they should just let you kill one side. So much for the freedom.
Well, you basically there's a pivotal moment near the climax of the game where you can pick, and that kind of leads to the bad end. And it's one of the things where it's like if you walk out of the room and refuse to make a choice, that's how you get to the true ending or whatever. But I will say some of the character stories, like on a grand scheme, the story has kind of been there, done that. It's not bad. It's just kind of rote. I will say a lot of the character stories are quite interesting and usually quite sad and like bittersweet. Like for instance, one of the characters, one of the first ones you meet is a doctor. She's the doctor of the town that first heals you, and basically if you ever like die outside of combat, she takes you back to your house. And her parents are doctors, and her whole story is basically following in her father's footsteps, which just seems pretty rote, pretty basic. However, it has a few interesting, just kind of like bittersweet moments where she learns that for some reason her father didn't give what at the time the correct medicine to a patient, and so the patient died, and she's like, I'm the daughter of a failure, like how can this be, or whatever. But eventually she learns that the patient had an incurable disease, so what the father gave her was just something that would subdue the symptoms so that they could be with their family in their final moments, things like that. And this is something that is kind of doled out and revealed over the course of her story. So basically the theme there is that you can't save everyone, but you can just kind of like minimize the pain or sadness or loss. It's kind of picking your battles. You can't be God sort of thing. And maybe me summarizing it in 30 seconds here, it doesn't quite come across so profound, but the stories have a nice way of developing slowly, having kind of some interesting character themes, some interesting arcs, compared to some of the Fire Emblem supports that I was watching Adam play. They're a lot more interesting to kind of have these character stories in Harvestella. Some of them are your party members. Some of them are just key figures in the towns that you're in. So I did enjoy that alongside the main story. They were really good complements to each other and usually served each other. Each one kind of bolstered the other, and nothing felt superfluous or on the side completely. Everything kind of felt like it was cohesive and built to the world building really well. The gameplay, like I said, pretty basic, but served the purpose just fine. But if you're looking for something that's just pure farming sim, this game doesn't have a lot. You have like your main farm. You eventually get like a cave environment to grow like dry crops, and then like a wet environment to grow like tropical crops, and that's kind of it. You get a chicken coop and a sheep coop, and that's kind of it in terms of like livestock. And usually that just kind of is supplementing your income. So that I will say that the income in this game is really well balanced. You don't, at least in even though I found some really efficient ways to make money, I never felt like I was ever overloaded. There was always plenty to spend money on, plenty of like supplies to make or to upgrade gears. It was a good balance where I never felt strapped for cash, but I never felt like, in a lot of classic JRPGs, it feels like you can afford everything all the time. Currency is pointless. So it avoided both pitfalls there. So I thought that was pretty good.
It feels really neat how like one of the early game, like really like solid ways of getting money is by like cooking and then like bringing them to ends, because you'll basically be paid for each unique like dish you give them. And that was really really useful early on.
Yeah, and in end game, you kind of it gets a little bit more like you're manipulating the game. Like for instance, you'll learn that in the summer, the watermelon crop gives you the best return. So the best way to make money in the summer in the end game is literally just buy all the watermelons you can, fill up your entire waterside crop with watermelons, grow them all and sell them all at the same time. So at that point, it really kind of feels like you've broken the game. But that's at the very end. Throughout the course of the main story, yeah, you're going through the seasons, you're cooking new dishes as you get access to more crops, and then dropping them off throughout the different towns. And I actually like made a notepad file, like, oh, I still got to make this for the seaside town. I still got to make this for the winter town. So that actually felt really quite engaging. Like, oh, now I can finally grow pumpkins. I can make this thing to sell at the main town. Because now it's finally autumn. Oh, but these pumpkins take all the
bright
grows.
future as a farmer, Ryan.
Yeah. So, but no, Harvestella, I think I put it in my top 10 list at like number 4. So it made the top half of my list. So like I enjoyed it mainly because I was surprised, and the game kind of was more suited to my preferences. Having not played a lot of farming sims, it was more like a gateway for like, now you can play more farming sims. But if it's someone where you're really into it and you can have like I don't have the point of reference to say like, well, Stardew Valley did this better, or Harvest Moon did this better. So I guess ignorance is bliss kind of there. But for kind of something that was kind of experimental, I've played a lot of games that I'm just like, I'm not sure I'll like this, and then I end up hating it. Harvestella, I ended up really quite enjoying. So definitely, I don't think it didn't make our top 10 for our site, but it is a game that I would highly recommend.
I have 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
One, who did you choose to live with in the post game?
I just picked. Oh yeah, so the again, if you are a person that likes romance in these games, it's an afterthought here as well. In the end game, you basically pick a character and then they live at your house, and that's kind of it. I picked Arya, who's basically just like the main one. She's the long red-haired girl in the cover art, and I just picked her because she was the main one, because I didn't really feel like, oh, this is the one. Because I don't really care, I guess. And she has the most story look in as well, so it feels like, all right, you're the canon choice, quote unquote. I don't care about that as much as it might come across. All right, what was the second question?
Second question: how do you feel about emo as a name for a person?
I thought it was like, oh, that's kind of strange, but I guess I was kind of over it. I had my girlfriend watching, and she's like, "Oh, her name's Emo. That's unfortunate." I'm like, "Yep, that is unfortunate." Yeah, so one of the characters' name is Emo.
That's the only other character's name I remember that game. It's like I was like, someone's named Emo, and that stuck with me.
Yeah. So no, Harvestella, I do recommend it. Though, if you were, this is coming from a person that has not played a lot of farming sims, so put that in the footnotes.
I will say, just because I have not played it on Switch, but I do know Colin's played it on Switch. The performance is apparently not great. So if you have the option to play it on Steam Deck, play it on Steam Deck.
Oh yeah, I played it on Steam Deck and it ran pretty damn well. I think I had one crash that seemed kind of really random, but other than that, it was fine. All right, and then the last game that we have listed here, just for a little quick look in, is of course I was asking the cast here what we wanted to talk about on our first podcast back for 2023, and Chow did what Chow does and said that he was going to play a classic. So Chow said that he had played the game Sweet Home, which I was not well aware of, but as far as I've learned very recently, it is kind of a progenitor of the survival horror genre. So, Chow, tell me about Sweet Home and why you decided to play it over the holidays.
Okay, so the whole idea was this, like, oh, my friends are really into like horrors and survival horror games and shit, and they were like, let's watch the Sweet Home movie. And we were like, and we also invited a friend that's not into horror movies, and he's like easily scared of horror movies. Like, he was engaged the entire time, but the other three of us was not engaged at all, and we just kept shit talking the movie while we were watching this movie. And he was like, "Oh, I wasn't feeling scared because of your shit talking comments all the time." And so we're like watching this movie. It was god awful, but we heard that because it inspired, the Sweet Home video game. We got to see the movie, right? And yeah, it wasn't good. So yeah. That's what I gotta say about that. So what happens in this game, or even in the movie, is that this reporter wants to write a case about this kind of like this haunted mansion where this painter painted this like masterpiece or something like that, and they want to go and explore it. So the reporter gets permission from, I think it's like the municipal government or something, to get like permission to go there, and he just goes there to investigate it, right? And he brings his daughter. There is a lead reporter, because the main character is not the lead reporter. Somebody else is the lead reporter. He gets the cameraman, who's a creep, and then there is, what was it? I think there's one more. There's I think like a assistant reporter to the main character that likes him because the main character is widowed. So there's that. So that's the 5 casts in there. They go there, and the mystery is really odd. Like, it doesn't really explain how the powers work in the mansion. Like, first it was saying that you need to avoid the light so that you don't get burnt and killed from it. Then later on, it's just like other shit's happening. Like, there's lightning bolts coming from below ground. At one point, you step in, you get burnt to death for no reason. It's like nothing in this movie sort of makes sense. It feels like there's too many ideas all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like in the movie in a nutshell. In the video game, you basically, it's like, imagine playing Dragon Quest, but there is no inns. You're just in a mansion, and that healing item comes very sparsely, so that, it's like finding a green herb in Resident Evil, right? You don't see a lot of them, but they are kind of like carefully placed out through the mansion, right? So that's probably where the idea came from, where you have limited healing supplies and no place to rest. And the game has permadeath, which is kind of odd for an NES RPG.
Do you think Resident Evil had permadeath in mind at certain point, like at certain point of development?
If they would have like a team members, because what's really weird about this game is that every character has a key item, right? You know how Resident Evil is more of a puzzle game than a horror game, right? You're trying to find a key to open access to the next area most of the time, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like, and this game has a lot of those elements, right? You could split into like 2 groups, or you could go in solo. But the thing is, every character that you use has a key item. For example, the main character has a lighter, and the assistant reporter has a first aid kit, right? So she's like one of the few people that could heal. But what happens if someone dies? So if someone like dies, then wouldn't you be locked out of a key item? It's like no, you could still pick up the key items from your dead party members, right?
Oh, okay.
So you're not completely game locked in case if someone dies, right? And I didn't fully beat the NES version because NES games are stupidly hard. So I watched a let's play of someone beating the whole game of getting the true ending, because apparently how the ending works in the game is based on how many people were still alive.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, that's how that usually works.
Spoilers for the movie: 2 people died. So obviously in the game you can have no one died, because at the end of the game there is an ending that shows you that it's still a bad ending, because if you beat the game with all 5 members alive, they go back home. The guy that gave them the key to access the mansion, turns out he's a zombie, and the game just ends there or something like that.
That's so what the fuck?
While
Okay.
in the movie is a happy ending. They just basically. Oh yeah, there's one character that joins the main character that looks like a vampire hunter. He has like this cowboy hat, this old dude, and he knows about the mansion, but he kind of dies in the movie without giving away who the hell he really is.
Okay. Is it possible to get the movie ending from the game if you have the same 2 people die from the movie in the game?
No,
Oh.
no.
Huh.
But like how they die in the movie is so odd too. It's like randomly everyone's just acting weird, and all of a sudden, the guy's just kind of combusted for no reason, and then the other girl starts panicking and starts running, and the axe to mate that dude placed there by because he said it was heavy, and everyone's like, why the fuck are you carrying this axe in this room?
Yeah, I've never watched the movie nor played the. I know that it exists, but I've never watched or played it.
Yeah, but anyways, the guy bringing an axe because he finally like, oh man, I found this really sweet prop in this mansion, this gigantic axe. It's fucking heavy as hell, and everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? It's like put that away. And so anyways, that girl sees that guy being burnt to death for no reason. He's starts like melting, and then he gets cut in half because I don't know, for no stupid reason. And this is the part where they talk about in the movies that you gotta stay near the light so the shadows don't kill you or something like that. But they never like address how it works and shit like that, right? So anyway, she panics and she runs away, and that giant axe falls on her head, and she's the second person to die. And I forgot about the vampire hunter dude, like the guy that looks like a vampire hunter dude. He also dies. So make that free.
Okay.
But he never joins you in the video game. He's more like this advisor dude that gives you hints on how to play the game, sort of guy. But like, he's not a main playable character in the video game.
Now you hadn't played this game before, right? You'd seen the movie but not played the game.
I played a little bit of the game. I didn't fully play it. I just watched a let's playthrough of someone beating it because Nintendo games are stupidly hard, right?
Right. Okay. I gotcha.
Have the fast forward experience, right?
Just like Chow to just watch someone else play. Like, I'm just kidding.
Hey, come on, man.
Do you think you can create Resident Evil out of just like not knowing what you know of the game? Do you like can you appreciate Resident Evil a little bit more now? Of like, damn, how the fuck did they make Resident Evil out of that? Like being inspired from that game.
Like it has similar concept. They just changed it from not an RPG to an action game, sort of, right?
Just like
I mean, they have this exact same puzzle solving elements. You got
it doesn't have Wesker. I mean,
it's not enough global saturation, I guess.
You don't have that slick live action intro that the
Bro, the sunglasses,
dude. I love that live action intro so much.
Oh man. But yeah, that's this game in a nutshell. We do not recommend the movie, and also like if anyone watches the movie, the music is so out of place. Like it's either too intense or it's just doesn't fit the scene at all. Like in the first part, when the main character gets access to the mansion, they drive this nice Jeep to get to the mansion, and it's like this epic Mario style adventuring music going to the house. It's like, come on, what the hell is this movie?
This movie sounds sick. I should watch it.
But anyways, that's our Christmas session with my friends. We've been watching nothing but horror movies, and now we're watching Higurashi for New Year's Day, I guess. We didn't watch it on New Year's Day because we think that, in like watching something on New Year's would set up a bad setting for the rest of the year.
What has been your favorite thing you've watched so far with them recently?
Probably just Higurashi.
Are you just doing it from the beginning, or like one of the newer seasons?
We did such a weird take on watching it. We basically watched the remake first because we thought the remake had better animation, but after 18 episodes in, we're like, this makes absolutely no fucking sense. Let's just go watch it.
You didn't realize it wasn't a remake.
So we're like, it's like this. So we watch 18 episodes in, and we're like, this makes no fucking sense. So
Okay,
let's go watch
so you watch Go first, which is GOU. So you
Yeah,
watch Go first. Okay, that's good. And after 18 episodes of Go, you're like, okay, maybe we should watch the original because it's clearly not something we can fucking. That's so good.
It's basically halfway in. This all of a sudden, like these characters are in high school now, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Nothing makes sense now. Let's go back and watch the original.
That is so funny. I love that. Like you guys didn't realize it was a remake early on. It took you 18 episodes to be like, that's so good. I love it.
That's our experience.
I don't blame you because they were pitching that Go as a remake, and then they did a fake out after the first episode. It's like, oh, it's not a remake, but it's only obvious to people who knew it beforehand.
Yeah, it's like everyone that was already a When They Cry fan, like when they saw them say, "Oh, it's a remake," nobody believed them, and we were right not to believe them.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good.
But I think the original is better in a story perspective, because like
most people agree with you. Most people agree.
Yeah, they agree because it's also digestible too. Like it makes sense too. Like early on.
They kind of a lot of information that seems kind of important. I think the remake kind of expects you to know.
Yes, because it's not a remake, Chow. It's a sequel.
Yeah,
it's
but they sold it as a remake.
Yes, because it was supposed to be obvious after the first episode, but you guys didn't know that. You guys were just you guys are so
first. We didn't want to watch the original first because the animation was jank.
Jesus Christ, dude, this is so good.
Like my favorite part was this guy's face. This Onishi, he has this awesome voice. That's like, my brother. Like, what the hell is this guy? And his faces is completely different in every frame for each episode, and you're like, oh my god. But anyways, we're going back with the original now.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, congratulations, you got there. Even though probably a lot of plot points have already been spoiled for you through Go, you guys are champs.
Wait! I somehow found myself lost in a different podcast. I think. Where am I?
It's true.
I'm really glad whenever we loop Chow in on his escapades for these things, because everything just seems to go off the rails. So I do appreciate it genuinely.
Oh,
I didn't realize that we revived Zach's old anime podcast for a split second there.
I am a couple episodes behind on Gundam Mercury, so I'll be probably catching up on that this weekend.
Season core
stay
finale
tuned
tomorrow.
I heard the last episode got delayed by 2 days because of...
the delay was Gundam for the Gundam.info broadcast. I don't know if it's affecting Crunchyroll the broadcast as well. As far as I know, it's still airing tomorrow.
Okay.
It better.
It's a long way for the season finale.
Well, that covers us for games we've been playing. So obviously we had the Fire Emblem Engage preview from Adam, Chained Echoes back and forth between me and Josh, some Harvestella look in, and then of course Chow with Sweet Home plus anime. We got One Piece Odyssey releasing soon, but I don't know if anyone here is going to have a look in on that. So we'll either have something on the podcast or up on the site. So stay tuned. And then of course, deep into Fire Emblem Engage as we close out January. Going into the news section of this podcast, we're not going to cover absolutely everything that's been in our wheelhouse since we last podcasted, but I took a look through December and early January at the highlights. So all the things that came out of the Game Awards, I got the big hitters and put them here. Falcom had their annual investor meeting with a couple big announcements. We also have some announcements for some localizations on our end, on the West for that, and a few other things kind of dabbled throughout this section. And we're going to start out with something that, as far as I'm aware, is out of left field. I don't know if this was teased. I don't know if anyone was expecting this, but what it is a new action RPG from Type Moon, developed by Omega Force, called Fate Samurai Remnant. It is an action RPG with an original setting in feudal Japan based on the Fate series, basically with an alternate telling of the Holy Grail War. So I can actually speak to this with some small amount of authority. I have seen the original anime. I have seen the original anime.
I'm so proud of Brian.
I have not played the visual novel. I've not seen Unlimited Blade Works or the trio of movies, but I say, oh, Holy Grail War. I know what that is. So I don't have much knowledge of any of the other Fate video game adaptations, but my understanding is that this being a completely original setting is quite different and distinct. Do I have that correct, Josh?
Yeah, because the previous Fate console games that people are used to are, because like this is developed by Omega Force and Ko Shibusawa. So like people are expecting this will be like a Muso Warriors type game, and the last ones that we got were the Fate Extella series with Fate Extella and Fate Extella Link from Marvelous. So they were under them. Now it's back to Koei Tech, or not back, but it's now at Koei Tecmo with those developers on hand.
Instead of it being legally distinct Warriors, it's full fat Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. So this is pretty exciting because there a lot of people are already excited. Like a lot of fans are already excited because there's a fan favorite, Musashi Miyamoto, is there. So she is from the Fate Grand Order mobile game. And then she shows up here, and then you outfit, and then people are excited. Like, who else is going to show up at the very the beginning of the trailer? You have your typical like Fate series beginning where like this young dude like summons like a servant, which is like the servant is like a historical figure that they summon for the Holy Grail War. So he summons this dude with a sword. We don't know what the identity of the swordsman yet, but it's going to be based on a historical figure. So a lot of people are very excited to see their favorites to show up in it, because there's a lot of like feudal era type of servants that have already been at the Fate Grand Order mobile game. So they have quite a large selection to choose from if they want to have familiar faces in it, and of course new ones as well. So this announcement came at the very, very, very end of the Fate end of year special that they do, like the Fate Project end of year live stream that they do in Japan, like that airs on TV there. So this showed up like at the very, very end of it, like after the credits and everything, and no one knew what this was at all until they showed the trailer. And that's all we know for now. We know that this is coming releasing worldwide simultaneously. This is up on the Koei Tecmo America YouTube page as well. So it's already been announced for localization. I assume it's worldwide simultaneous at this point, but I don't know 100% sure. But yeah, it's pretty exciting to see how this will turn out. Like I'm pretty excited. I'm always looking for these types of games, and yeah, it's hard to know what to expect. Honestly, like we don't even know if it's like a Warriors type Muso styled game yet. We just know it probably will be because of Omega Force. Yeah, but we don't know exactly like what the gameplay looks like overall yet. So this is a cool announcement out of nowhere that I'm pretty excited to get my hands on whenever it comes out.
I noticed on our website that we have this slated 2023. Did they actually say 2023?
Yes, it did say 2023 on the trailer.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So this is something we'll be playing this year. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we have obviously the announcement and the links to the official websites, including the North American and European official websites on our site, as well as the announcement trailer. These next two announcements also came near the end of the year, and these two have not been officially announced for an English release. This is from Falcom's, I believe, from their annual investor meeting. We have two announcements for the Ys series. We have kind of the expected announcement for Ys 10, and then a surprise that was thrown in that I don't think anyone was expecting. So I'll start with Ys 10. We have an official announcement of Ys 10 Nordics. Nordics? I'm not sure which one it's going to be.
I think it's
Nordics. I guess I'm Canadian now.
Have you ever heard of the hockey team, the Quebec Nordiques, before they got sold to become the Colorado Avalanche?
I don't know why my brain immediately defaulted to Nordiques. But anyways, Ys 10 Nordics is set to release in Japan for PlayStation and Switch in 2023. No announcement of an official localization yet, but that's kind of the place we've been at Falcom. We're expecting it to come through later. And a lot of initial look-ins and screenshots for this game. And the main thing here is that it seems like the combat system has moved away from the party system that was used in Ys 7, 8, and 9, where instead...
Thank God.
Yeah, instead it looks like a combat system, and I have not dived into like the social media to see exactly how much detail has gone into here, but it revolves around two characters. There is a solo mode, and then there is a combination mode where you play the two characters simultaneously, kind of in a back and forth manner. So we had the original key art released a while ago that revealed the second character. Do we have a name for her yet? I don't know if that's been revealed.
I don't think so.
All right, but in a lot of the art and the gameplay for it, these two characters, Adol and this lady, seem like they're chained together in some fashion. So not sure exactly what the story relevance is on that. There is, of course,
they're saying it's only two playable characters in this one. So yeah, that's.
So it seems like less of like a party-based action RPG and more like almost like a character action game, only with two characters. And
Yeah.
you can look at the UI. There's like some pips on there. There's a bar. There's a meter. So it seems like there's going to be some sort of like action game sort of comboing, I'm sure. But yeah, and I know in the announcement they basically just said it's a very different sort of action game RPG combat gameplay system. So
I'm
that's
excited to see this
interesting
in
too.
motion.
It's different.
I'm really excited to see this in motion. Also, what's really cool is this is Adol is 17 years old in this entry, and it's the events the East timeline. This takes place right after East 1 and 2.
Yeah, so it's before.
so I didn't realize this was young Adol.
Yeah, it's 17-year-old Adol.
We're not going to
And,
have old Adol exploring the North Pole anytime soon.
That has to be the last one because he has to disappear and become Santa Claus.
True.
There's also a fun thing here where it seems like there's a mode where he can pilot his own ship, like a sailing ship, which of course is,
Adol and ship's really good. Yeah,
nothing will go wrong.
In heaven.
Yeah, so you can explore the sea using nautical charts while engaging in naval warfare with enemy ships. Yeah,
this is only after East 1. He doesn't know it's a pattern yet.
Yeah, so maybe this is where he gets cursed to never being able to.
Apparently, like the ship is also like your base as well, so you can build your base on the ship, which is interesting.
Which we've kind of seen Ys 8 and 9 kind of have that base building mechanics. I wouldn't be surprised. I know they're trying to break from the mold here a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a few similar echoes of building up your ship and recruiting a crew and things like that.
Yeah. There's also like a very like first details, like they're leading out terminology of like the battle system. Like they'll be like, defense has like weight to it, and then guarding builds up something called like the revenge gauge, which would increase your attack. And also like there's like these actions called like mana actions. And then
which I don't think they detailed at all.
At all. And then what?
I think they literally said there's also mana actions, but we'll detail these later. Like okay.
Then one of the screenshots has like a grappling hook for Adol as well. So
you're
and then one of the screenshots has like the new heroine like surfing in the air, kind of like Eureka 7, which is like kind of neat.
It almost looks like some sort of exploration gimmick. It actually reminded me of Tales of Berseria. You got the little.
I forgot about that. I was thinking of Star Ocean 6. Like instead of just Duma jetpacking, you just ride your hoverboard.
Just ride Duma like a skateboard in the air. But yeah, I mean this is awesome. A breath of fresh air for Ys is what it just really needed for a good amount of years now. So I'm really, really curious to see how this looks in motion, how it plays. Like everything they've been saying about this is like, all right, I'm interested. Definitely show me more.
And then Falcom did have another announcement that was a bit of a surprise. This is a big get for classic Ys fans, and that is a remaster of Ys: The Oath in Felghana called Ys Memoire. The Oath in Felghana will release on Nintendo Switch spring of this year in 2023. In Japan. Yeah, again, both of these announcements have not been officially announced in English or for an English release. So this remaster of Ys Oath in Felghana, which, if you're not aware, is kind of the quote-unquote canon version of Ys 3, will have improved sound effects and HD visuals. It'll have redone portraits that you can toggle between. It'll also have a toggleable soundtrack between the original version, the PC 8801 version, and then, I don't know what this is, X68000 version. What are these versions?
That's a very powerful PC back in the day. A lot of Capcom games are ported using that PC.
A quick note on that: that soundtrack toggle was actually added to the Steam version you can get right now. Yeah. So that's kind of not actually new for us anyway.
biggest
So
new part is Adel talks again. Because he
yeah,
talks in the
that-
original
the
PC
wording was a
engine
little
version.
confusing. Like they said they gave Adol a voice, but like, did they give him dialogue?
I mean, he talks in the original PC engine version, and if
Yeah.
you play the remake from Taito, he's actually like fully voiced by what's
But
the
did they
voice
add
actor?
like dialogue for him in Oath and Felghana? Because he doesn't have.
No, they would have to
dialogue.
add dialogue for him.
Like, he has a voice now, but is it just like?
I would say
Yeah.
that's like a battle cries or rants or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Oh
So
man,
he has a
I
voice,
want
but
him
does he
to
have
talk because
dialogue?
Adel
doubt
sounds
it.
pretty intelligent when I was playing, the games from back then. So, oh man, does everyone hate talkable Adel?
I don't know. Talking Adel is like
I
weird.
kind of wish they would do it. Either go have him fully talk like a full character, or not talk at all. I kind of hate where it's just like he says like a line very randomly here or there. Just kind
I
of.
don't want the narration to talk for him.
Right.
It's like Adel says that he's gonna book a room.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I kind of just
I
like
don't
the
like that in
standard silent.
RPGs.
Yeah, I kind of like the standard silent protagonist approach. Is like don't give him like dialogue, but like if it's like just battle cries or pips here and there, that's fine. But like I don't want narrator talking for him, or if he's gonna talk, it's like just like
The less I have to
selection
hear
of
Bryce
music.
Papenbrook, the better. Oh wait, I can just play Japanese.
Man, I mean, he got Aaron's voice in from Attack on
Mhm.
Titan. He played Japanese. He's the
Mm,
wait. Do they have the same guy in English too?
I don't know.
Is it Yuki? What's his face?
Yuki
Kaji?
Kaji?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is that Aaron? Also?
Apparently, he's the official.
Yeah, that's Aaron.
Kaji
Oh, yeah,
English
Aaron
double.
also. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The only other thing.
Sometimes we'll run into that where like an English voice actor and a Japanese voice actor, like the English voice actor oftentimes does like the dub for that same Japanese voice actor. So
And-
Well, because
Because
they would be expected to play similar characters. So that
Exactly.
makes sense. Well, the only other thing the key thing that I missed here was that there was also a high speed mode where you can have battle and field movement sped.
Yeah, that's weird. Like, do you need a high speed mode for?
What the God is already like really
Yeah,
pretty
it's
speedy.
already really fast.
Wouldn't that get you
What the
murdered?
fuck?
I mean, you can zoom through like dialogue, I guess. Faster,
I know, but
like,
you're
yeah.
like playing in combat when there's like
That's
a million
so
bullets,
funny.
and you sped
Yo.
it up.
Oh, that Falcom speedruns are about to go fucking ham, dude.
Well, actually thinking about it, Nayuta has the same fucking thing on PC.
Oh, really? Fuck.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
That's funny.
It-
That's really. I would never think of like to give a high speed mode to Oath and Felghana. That's like the not a title I would think of.
What do we think about this being Nintendo Switch exclusive? It just seems kind of
Well,
interesting.
Falcom outright said as much that they wanted to use Switch as an excuse to re-release like digital versions of their older games.
Yeah.
I think this is digital only, so it's like, yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Sure. I mean, like Oath and Felghana is a fucking good game. So if it reaches more people through this, sure.
maybe it'll go like the Ys Origin route, where it just sort of like slowly percolates to all the other platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
kinda feel
People deserve to play a non-party based Ys game.
I kind of feel bad for Origin. It got like the most lackluster like revisions of the game. It's just like a straight up PC port.
More of a port. Ys Origin's a really good game still. So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's my favorite of the Napstem engine games, but I understand that not a lot of people feel that way.
I think
It's actually
some
my
people do.
favorite. I prefer it over Oath, but it took a while to grow on me. It's like when
Yeah.
I first play it, I prefer Oath, but
I don't think Oath actually gets much from the kind of not really Metroidvania-esque, the exploration aspect of like the world itself. And I kind of feel the same way about Arkham Napstem. Like the whole, like that game instantly like got like went up at least like 1.5 with the XC changes, where it's like you can just teleport to any save point.
Yeah.
Because before it was brutal, because it's like,
Mhm.
okay, now go to the other end of the island. That's going to take you like 15-20 minutes to get there. Fuck that.
And then the other Falcom related announcement that came later in the month is that we got an official release date. This is from the Nice America for the official localization in the West. We got a release date for Trails into Reverie. It will launch this year, 2023, on July 7th for PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And then we got a story trailer accompanying the announcement. So cool to finally have a date for it. I'm glad that
from the fan base, it seems like a lot of people have a lot of opinions on what they called the route.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. So
what was it called again?
I already
There's a
forgot.
walk system.
They shoehorned the word trails into it somehow.
Yeah,
trails into
basically
walks.
the way it was called in Japanese was literally like just cross story or something like that.
Which makes sense to me.
Yeah, I guess they wanted to be cute with changing it. It doesn't matter. Like people
Yeah, I
making a
know.
big deal about it. It really doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Especially
matter. It's like when you see it, it's like if you already knew it had like an original English name, it changed a cross story into Trails to Walk. It's just like I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Well, okay, it's weird, but at least it's not like the fucking Ys 8 thing where it was like originally it was like Crevice of the Archaeozoic area.
Yeah, I mean it's just better for sure. I mean it's better from being abysmal. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what I want to say is I can understand like if this was the only thing people were getting up in arms about, it would be like, okay, yeah, it's a weird change. It still doesn't matter, but I can understand why it's like, why'd you change it? But people were getting up in arms about what they changed Valiant Rage to.
Oh yeah, what was it again? I forgot.
I don't even know what that
I
is.
forgot, but it's like I remember. I think it was like Unified Front or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Oh,
like
that's funny.
considering what Valiant Rage, like the actual like mechanic is, Unified Front. It's like that makes sense.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know what this is, and like without context, I don't know. I could guess what Valiant Rage is. It sounds like an attack.
It is. Well, it's kind of like an attack / buff. Basically, your entire party, including people that are in like reserve and like your guest character, all work in unison. So that's why I think like United Front, again, if that is the actual name, I think it is.
That makes
It makes more
without
sense.
context, I think United Front seems to make more sense to me. Like just if you told me should this be called United Front or Valiant Rage, I'd be like United Front seems to make more sense. But
No, I mean, it's just like one of those weird things. It's like, okay, sure. No. I think it's one of those like weird disconnects. It's like, yeah, like they already had an English name before, It's like to me, it's just like the extra step to like relocalize something that was already like in English, before. It doesn't really matter at the bigger picture, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's just like it was legible before. It's like it's re-legible again, I guess.
Yeah.
there was one other Falcom sort of related announcement.
Oh, did I
recently.
miss one?
Anime guys.
Well, there was the anime that started.
I watched the first episode yesterday. Let's go the Cold Steel.
That's not what I was referring to.
Portable.
They Clouded Leopard Entertainment announced the PC port for Kuro 2.
Oh yeah.
That means you'll probably be able to buy it. It won't be in English until someone in an Excel script or whatever. But
it's gonna be worse than the Crow spreadsheet because I've already seen people say, "Oh, just machine translate it," and it's like,
let's go. Oh my god, that's funny. Just machine translate it. You'll be fine.
I'm going to play Kuro 2 this year. Probably. Well, I don't know exactly when. It's not I'm in a rush.
I'm hoping like after February, just publishers are just like, we're not going to release a game until June.
The problem is that March is filled with games too.
Yeah, March does have a lot. It's what two others.
Well, look, there's no games right now. You better like just do what you can right now. There's no games right now. One Piece isn't a game.
But the problem is I have games I have to cover.
Well,
don't cover them then.
Don't cover. Just don't cover them.
Also, the 14 patch is early next week.
Have you read those patches? Those are massive. What is going on?
Every Endwalker patch has been massive. They've been doing really well about that.
I was like scrolling. It's like, hey, this never seems to end.
Now, one thing I wish they didn't patch was they're getting rid of the Paladin dots. How dare them? How dare them?
What?
So it's only something you really care about if you're really into 14. Let's just leave it there.
That might end our entire rating scene because our Paladin, she's very hardcore into Paladin. She gets like 90 parses. And, now you have to relearn the entire rotation. This can disband our raid group
Dang, dude.
Paladin doesn't work.
They're doing a complete rebalancing of Paladin because it was the interesting tank, but also because the way it was interesting meant that it was a sustained DPS versus like a 2-minute burst DPS, where very explicitly with starting in Shadowbringers but moving into Endwalker, they've wanted to change it so that every class kind of bursts at around 2 minutes for DPS. And because fights are now being designed with that in mind, they were like, well, Paladins, it's really hard to balance it. So even if people like the way Paladin plays now, we're going to have to change it. Which sucks because the entire like rotation for Paladin was based around like constantly juggling your dots. Like it was like a really like long like flow of, okay, where do you put your Goring Blade in? When do you do your other 1, 2, 3? And then like when do you overwrite the dots? Because like your burst damage with the configure combo would end up with applying a different dot, which would overwrite the Goring Blade and vice versa. So there was a lot of considerations depending on the fight of when you would want to apply dots and when you wouldn't want to. And a lot of people like that, myself included, even if I did not play Paladin for Prague. But I understand why they're doing it, but especially recently, a lot of people have kind of like put like the whole idea of the 2-minute burst thing under the microscope and have been like, you know what? I understand why you were trying to do this, but in practice, it doesn't work out the way you thought it would. Maybe you should reconsider it.
I hope Yoshida doesn't do any FF16 balance patches when we find fun stuff in that game.
Well, the next set of headlines here that we have are from the Game Awards. So a lot of these were just, or when was that? Like December 9th, 10th?
Is Armored Core 6 RPG?
I don't have it covered here, but yeah, that was probably the biggest takeaway for a few of us on the site.
It's not, but I can argue that it's RPG. Don't worry.
My favorite outcome from that was people cheekily being like, "Oh, so you're into Armored Core? Let me show you all of the places that you can play the Armored Core series if you want to catch up." And it's like, is it available on PS4, Xbox One, or newer, or Switch, or PC? And it's like, no, yes, nothing.
To be honest, when you first said where to play Armored Core, the first thing that came to my head are the PS1 and PS2 games.
Oh yeah,
those consoles.
There you go.
Yeah, just hook up your PS2 and PS3 and play For Answer and have a good time.
For Answer is probably the best of like the HD era. So far, I mean,
for a lot of people, it's definitely the most fast-paced one. There is some merit to like the Armored Core 5 and Verdict Day type stuff. That there's interesting stuff there too.
Okay,
I think like Armored Core is like a series that's like defined by like era, right? Like there's different like PS1 era type style Armored Core is very different from PS2 era, and even PS3 era, like 4 and then 5 are very each other. It's very there's like no consistent thing about Armored Core except customizing mechs to like go beat missions. That's like the only gameplay thing that they all share in common, but the way they play are all very different depending on console and platform and all that stuff, which is nice and neat. I like it.
So in no particular order for the announcements from the Game Awards. The first thing I have listed here, I'm going to miss George's contributions on our podcast from a few years back, but we have a announcement for Hades 2 from Supergiant Games, which is coming to early access this year in 2023. So, of course, Hades, kind of RPG adjacent title, but obviously one that was incredibly well regarded. This is Supergiant's first direct sequel to any of their games. So we got a new trailer, and it features the different protagonist as Melinoe, who I don't know my Greek or Roman history well enough to have like recognized that name, but I guess I didn't really know Zagreus either. But I have not played.
Purposely pick mythological characters that aren't like Hercules or whatever,
right? Because they don't want to have it's like, well, I want to compare this rendition of this character that has been interpreted so many different ways to Disney or something like that. It's someone that's a little bit more obscure. But I've not played Hades. I know you have, Adam. I don't know if this is anything exciting about this that you can pull out of the trailer, or just glad that you're getting more Hades.
I mean, Hades is a really good game. It's one of those things where it's just like, is this just going to be more of it.
Yeah, I think
How
that's
they're
that's a
gonna be
big question. Like I loved Hades to death. Like I did the playthroughs for like the true ending and all that stuff. So it's really I'm very fond of Hades. But I am with you that like I wonder what a Supergiant Games like direct sequel looks like from like how do they approach direct sequels, because this is their first one to their
The
property.
trailer kind of looked almost like identical to the first, with just new characters. Like you had like the god random roguelike power ups and things, the same type of gameplay.
Yeah, it does
I'm not
it does the
saying it is gonna be the
inverse.
same. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it is going to be the same. It just looks similar.
Yeah,
So-
it does the inverse where you're like that. You're not trying to escape. You're going deeper down for this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, for what it's worth, Melanoe is Zagreus' sister. I know some people were confused. Like, is it his daughter? Or is it someone else? No, they're siblings. So.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, I'm sure the Supergiant will find ways to like make it distinct and different, and not just like the reskin of Hades one. Like if anything, like I think Supergiant Games is they've proven themselves. They have a really great track record. They've proven themselves to like really change up the what they want to do from their titles from title to title. They're just very good at kind of innovating upon themselves and finding new gameplay experiences. That not many other games do. Like when you think about Pyre, who the fuck like I can't think of another game that's like Pyre besides like the progression is kind of like Oregon Trail, but like the way you play it, not really like anything else. When you
I
think
think the
about
problem, I have not played Pyre. Everyone I know who has played Pyre says it's excellent, and some people even like it more than Hades. But it seems like the problem is everyone has played Pyre. It's hard to describe what it is.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of like because they'll say it's kind of like an Oregon Trail, but then when you get into like combat, it's kind of like a sports game. Yeah, and then it's like, but you have like a kind of like RPG-esque options during that. It's like, okay, well, you just have to play it for yourself to kind of like get a feel for it, because it's so difficult to explain. But you think about like games like Transistor, like I really like Transistor from them, and like that's other games have done similarly, but not like quite in the same vein as them. So I think we'll wait and see. It's kind of the only thing I'm really bummed out about is they're doing I understand, but they're doing the Hades one approach of the early access, and they'll build upon it throughout the year. So for me, like I didn't really get into Hades one until like full release. So I'll have to kind of like block it out again until full release.
Well, at least it won't be exclusive to Epic Games for like a year.
True.
This time.
True. Very true.
This next one is one that I'll have to hand it back off to Adam again. One of the almost forgotten games of last year that we talked about so briefly on the end of the year podcast was Horizon Forbidden West. Obviously an excellent game by all regards, but just something that just seems to have not really penetrated in terms of our interest here. I think Adam has played it, and that's it. Adam, you were pretty comprehensive about Forbidden West when you played it last year. Do you have any interest in the Burning Shores expansion, which is launching in April as a PS5 exclusive expansion to Horizon Forbidden West?
I'm going in with the expectation that it's kind of like the Frozen Wilds expansion to Zero Dawn,
Right.
where it's just kind of like a new area, slightly bigger than maybe an area in the game already, with maybe a slightly more in-depth storyline. It's really kind of like an old schools type of expansion, where it's just more of the game with kind of like its own separated like storyline. That obviously it can't really, being a sort of a DLC, it's going to only majorly affect like the main narrative in only slight ways. Like I doubt this is going to be like required reading for the next game or whatever. But it's just kind of just like more. And I thought Zero Dawn. Well, both games I think are pretty good. They have that open world, all the trappings of open world games, like it or not. But I'll play it, but I don't think it's going to be much more than just kind of more for people who want more.
It's been long enough since Forbidden West came out that I'm just going to wait for the inevitable PC port at this point.
Yeah, the complete edition. Yeah. I think it's weird that this is a PS5 exclusive. Like I can imagine, like I imagine it'll be doing a lot of like crazy tech stuff under the hood that would make the PS4 version very hard to run. Like because I know they have added a lot of ambition. Probably had to cut back on some of that ambition to ship it on PS4. But I really wonder what the sales figures look like, I guess, for this kind of game. Because one, it's already an expansion, so inevitably sell less than the base product because that's kind of like the barrier to entry. So like not everyone who bought the base game will play the expansion, but now you have like the additional entryways or bottlenecks. Like this is only exclusive to a current gen console that's like still relatively like difficult to get your hands on.
I mean, most recent, like I'd say like in the last like month, that's kind of changed.
Okay.
And also, like they just announced yesterday, actually, that they've sold 30 million PS5s.
Yeah, they sold 30 billion PS5s. How many of those are were Horizon Forbidden West PS5 version, and how many of those will buy a PS5 exclusive expansion pass to Horizon Forbidden West on PS5? So just
The
like
thing is, though, is that like the PS4 version of Horizon came with the PS5 version. And it has cross save, so it's like anyone that's upgraded to PS5 since, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't limit the audience as much as you're maybe making.
I don't know. I maybe I'm just still underestimating like the install base of the PS5 at this rate compared to the PS4, and then there's on Horizon, fan base, and like I'm just thinking about like I wonder if like compared to like how much will this actually sell being a PS5 exclusive expansion, and plus there'll be inevitably people who buy this and say, why isn't my PS4 running this expansion?
Yeah,
I'm with James. I'll probably I played through the PC version of Zero Dawn because that was back when like Sony was on PC was novel and new, and now it's been a few years, so now it feels like you can go to the Steam page and see God of War and Horizon and Days Gone and all those things. So it's not so the fact that it doesn't have that novelty anymore. I'm like, am I that interested in playing Forbidden West? I think the answer is honestly no. It just didn't grab me. I'd almost be playing it out of obligation or because it's pretty.
I'm still in this weird phase of like the current gen consoles that I feel like the current gen really hasn't quote unquote started. Like it did, because there's still few games that are like so designed just for like these consoles.
There's only 2 proper PS5 exclusives once Returnal's PC version comes out. I'm not counting Demon's Souls remake because that's literally running on the PS3 version's code base.
Yeah.
It's literally just Astrobot and Ratchet and Clank. That's it.
It's like what? Like it's so weird.
What about is Ragnarok on PS4?
It's on PS4.
I didn't even know that.
Yep. And Gran Turismo, PS4. So I mean, with FF16 coming this year,
that is going to be
PS5 exclusive.
Forspoken is also going to be on PC. I'll give I guess both Returnal and Forspoken will give a pass because Forspoken's like the whole thing is like, oh, you need direct storage or something like that.
I'm kind of sitting here a little bit like mouth agape. Like this is the first time we brought up Forspoken this podcast, and it's coming out a few days after Fire Emblem Engage. Like, oh, Forspoken.
A demo came out for that. I've been too busy with life to like kind of give it a roll. I don't know if anyone else decided to download and try the demo.
Mine streamed the demo and he seemed to like it. I just haven't bothered to download it because it's like if I'm gonna play it, it's gonna be on PC, and I'm not sure if that's gonna be representative of the experience and what.
Yeah, I kind of like skimmed like the performance analysis of like how for the Forspoken demo runs on PS5. I'm like, I don't know if I want to run this on PS5 if I'm gonna play it. that's so yeah.
It's neat how it's using like FSR, because I remember like people weren't sure if the PS5 would do FSR too, because it was like so
it handles that. Interesting.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we kind of brought this up a few times already, but I'll just call it out here because I have it listed here. We got the release date for Final Fantasy XVI coming out on June 22nd. We already talked about that, but alongside we got another trailer for it, the Revenge trailer. And I never remember what they title these different trailers, but again, we've had over the last few months of 2022, we got a lot of look-ins on Final Fantasy XVI, and I'm pretty sure we've got the entire list of dominants and icons. And I know Alex has done really well in updating our little character bio dossier collection article. So all the different dominants that we know of and all the different kingdoms that have all been kind of detailed out in all these different trailers. I'm at the point though where I've seen enough. I'm convinced it's going to be an interesting experience. Hopefully, promisingly, it looks promising. So hopefully it'll be really good and kind of a return to form for mainline Final Fantasy. But
I'm super excited. It's like it looks great. The only thing I'm kind of like upset about is it's like we know it's eventually coming to PC, but it's going to be like 6 months later at the earliest. So it's like, well, I guess I'll just rebuy it when it comes on PC.
Yeah,
I'm playing this at launch.
I sure hope it has like a 60 FPS mode, if not just 60 FPS need.
It'll definitely be 60 FPS. It's like the whole shtick is it's like very clearly like character action combat.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the only footage you've seen so far hasn't been at that frame rate. So just like, please, I would love to play this game.
I'm on the trailer on YouTube, and there's this comment that I actually do like really feel like finally they showed the character just running around the world without combat, and I kind of agree. Like just show me traversal, just show me how you move from one place to the other, out of a cutscene, out of a CG, out of a combat, flashy shit. Just show me the character moving.
One of the things I really appreciate is how one of the party members is a dog.
True. Yeah. I respect that.
And then a game that I've been interested in for a while, it was originally supposed to go into closed beta in 2022, but that didn't happen. That's Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. We learned in December that the closed beta test was delayed to summer of 2023. And alongside of that, we got a new trailer for it, basically showing footage from Ever Crisis's rendition of Final Fantasy VII, and then Ever Crisis's like interpretation of the events of Crisis Core, which of course just had the big remaster also released in December. This is the Winter 2022 trailer. I like how for Final Fantasy 16 we get a fancy name for Ever Crisis. It's just Winter 2022. This trailer, the first like 85% of it is kind of what you expect. It's like a compilation of events from Final Fantasy VII and Crisis Core, and both the kind of the chibi-esque gameplay and then the Final Fantasy VII remake like combat footage. But then, of course, in Square Enix fashion, towards the end of the game, it gets a bit different. And the main stinger of this trailer here is that it shows the classic scene of Sephiroth standing in the fires of Nibelheim, only he's wearing a different outfit and his hair is really short. He looks like a Kingdom Hearts character now. And based on the tagline of Ever Crisis being another possibility for a remake, it's like, oh god, what are they doing? I don't know.
Look, at least at the very least, they're like kind of almost quarantining all this fucking weird multiverse shit, like in the mobile gacha game.
Well, it'll be shut down in less than a year.
Yeah, more on that later.
It's kind of weird, like because it's a big delay too, because they were planning to close beta test in winter 2022, and then like it got delayed all the way back to summer 2023. So clearly something happened in development to really push it back.
It's kind of fun the way they do this, because near the end of the trailer, they start showing like Zack and Aerith in different outfits. Like, oh, okay, cosmetics. You'll roll for them in different outfits, whatever.
I wonder
and
if
then it goes
out. I wonder if it'll come out in a couple of months that Yuji Naka was insider trading on this too.
Let's go! God damn it. Fucking Yuji Naka.
I hate that that's only half a joke. It's possible.
I know, you're totally right, because it's like, well, it's one of those. It's like, no, I can see it. It's not. Maybe. No, Jesus.
I do want to play Crisis Core again, the remake, just so I can remind myself exactly what happens there. Like I obviously remember
me too.
The high level, but not like in this Ever Crisis trailer, Zack runs into Ifrit in like a forest. I'm like, wait, does that happen? I don't goddamn remember.
It's kind of amusing because there's a PC mod now for the Crisis Core remake that like re-implements the original voices from the PSP version.
I will now buy your game.
So
that's pretty fun. And I'll skip ahead to this one because it is related, and Chow teased it. I remember a year ago or so, we were talking about the newest mobile entry in the Bravely Default series, Bravely Default Brilliant Lights. It was a Japanese only mobile game that kind of shockingly used the same art style as Bravely Default 2, even though I don't think that art style was super well received. We never got an official localization, but we now don't need to worry about that because Bravely Default Brilliant Lights will be ending service on February 28th. It looks like it originally released in January of 2022, so it's like 13 months for Bravely Default's most recent mobile outing, and remained in Japan for its whole life.
No, I mean, I never really heard talk about that game. At the very least, this game will be able to like end off on like a conclusive note. They do plan to release the final chapter, the main story, before the game service ends. So there'll be like and then there'll also be like an offline version for people who like played this game, so they can like go look back on like characters and stories that they got.
The more like Square Enix, not just mobile games, but also just like I guess games as a service in general that get like shuttered early, the more I realize the only reason why Saga, like Romancing Saga Reuniverse, is still going strong in the West is because they're just using that as a constant marketing tool for their like steady stream of Saga re-releases. That's the only reason.
Pretty much. I mean, like, yeah, like I hear it's actually like it does decently in Asia. So like they're really like they have a steady flow to it. Like they're somehow making it work. I have no idea how, but they're somehow making it work.
I remember
Kawazu's vision.
I remember when I was just like shot point blank with that random thing. It's like, hey, do you want to cover this Romancing Saga thing? It's like, well, I don't know if this will still be around in a year. And now it's been like 2.5 years later. It's like, well, I'll eat crow here. I'm very happy that it's still going because it's like it is a fun gacha from what I played. So
You're just like, I kneel Kawazu. You got it all figured out. I'm fucking wrong.
And even if it's shuttered now, it will at least have had a decent run. So
yeah.
I don't know. According to that spreadsheet that Josh sent me, it's like it's still making bank and everything else is failing. For some odd reason, I would think that Near Reincarnation would make more money, but it looks like that is tanking.
Dude, I don't know. Like the fucking people who run Saga are like geniuses.
Near Reincarnation is still probably going to last a bit longer because apparently, like you saw that minion that's coming to 14, right?
Oh yeah, the one that looks like Mama from Reincarnation. Yeah. So a little bit more, but yeah, I don't know. I have no idea of how like what the future prospects of that are like versus like Saga Reuniverse. Like Reuniverse just feels like it's got it figured out for a good while.
It probably is a lot easier for them to keep that upkept because it's reusing a bunch of sprites. So I mean,
low cost, highly profitable. Wow, at least it's not like wow, what was that? Echoes of Mana? I think that's
Echoes of Mana. Yeah, that spreadsheet. Like, dude, it is. That thing is getting shuttered this year. I'd be surprised if Echoes of Mana is still up by the end of the year. I'd be fucking shocked. There's no way that thing is staying alive soon, like that for that long.
Yeah, people must hate us for cursing every gacha game out there.
You know what? Gacha games deserve it. As someone who has played gacha games and still plays Princess Connect daily, these gacha games don't deserve anything anymore.
Gacha games don't deserve rights.
And sort of kind of related news, I kind of reshuffled some of the remaining topics here so that we kind of stay on this Square Enix related kick. One of the early releases from last year that was kind of in a very similar boat was Chocobo GP, which was the Square Enix Chocobo series themed kart racer that was almost inexplicably released as a games as a service title. So it had, I remember even when it released, it had characters that were exclusive to the battle pass, and I don't even remember, it was Cloud and Squall, and you had to do one way to get one of them, and you had to pay money to get the other. I don't even remember the details. It just recently had its 5th season of battle pass related unlocks, which I have not kept up to date on all of what those were.
I love battle passes.
Yeah, they don't call it Racer Pass or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I know, but it's still effectively the same thing.
Yeah, and they have announced that the premium currency is going to be discontinued. The newest content that was in season 5 will be the last. And
I will now buy your game.
Yeah, so
I don't know. I don't know if it's still buying Chocobo GP.
I'm joking, but it's like I remember like before all that shit about it being like battle pass seasons and all that came out. People were excited for it, and then it came out, and it's like this is not what I want.
Okay, Brian, tell me the name of the premium currency that's in Chocobo GP.
Mithril something? Or just Mithril?
Okay, do you want to know what the name of the premium currency is in Bravely Default Brilliant Lights?
Mithril?
Yep.
Is it?
Yes.
Apparently don't name your premium currency Mithril.
Very good, Square Enix.
Or don't publish your games as a service by Square Enix.
FF16 reveals that it has battle passes and dailies.
Yeah. So now I guess most generously, Chocobo GP is just a Chocobo / Final Fantasy themed kart racer. Only it'll have like the
It should have
vestiges.
been. It should have been that from day one.
But it'll have the vestiges of like you have to get
Fuck.
tickets and stuff. It seems to, or they have some interesting language here where they're just like, or was this may become? Let's see. Items originally sold in the Mithril shop, exclusive to season 1, may also be put back on sale with some exceptions. So it's like, they're just kind of keep the door open where it's like, oh yeah, you might not be able to get everything. Maybe.
You know what would break my heart if they announced this late on that this certain game has a battle pass or dailies or logins or whatever. You know what game would really break my heart if they announced that for that game? Theatrhythm Final Bar Line.
I can accept it for Theatrhythm. I think it doesn't.
I don't want any service things for Final Bar Line. I don't want to be like I gotta go log in and do my dailies. I don't want any battle passes. Please just keep it to the season pass thing to add more songs and that's it. I don't want to fucking unlock shit by playing it for like 10 billion hours to reach a certain battle pass level to unlock Yuffie's hair down outfit or skin or whatever.
In happier news, still in the Square Enix front, this is something that we were kind of expecting throughout the entirety of 2022. So 2022, we got the last release for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster series. That was Final Fantasy VI in February. And throughout that entire time, and throughout a couple of Nintendo Directs, we never got the announcement of that series coming off of PC and mobile. However, on mid-December, on December 17th or 18th, Square Enix finally announced that the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters will launch for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch sometime in spring 2023. So we were expecting this. Finally, it's happening. Don't have any other details other than spring. They'll launch digitally. They'll be able to be purchased individually or in a bundle. There will also be a limited physical edition available at the same time, so you can get a physical edition for either PS.
Just now, it's probably sold out.
It is already sold out, unless the Japanese version will also have English. But people seem to be hoping that because they delisted the screenshots that they're fixing the font. I'm sorry, folks. They have done multiple updates to the game on PC and mobile since launch, and they haven't fixed that font yet.
We cannot say this as people who write on RPG site because Alex is the one who published an article saying no, they definitely are because he's
yeah. So this is a little bit of
he's heard from people internally that they're fixing it.
I hope he's right.
Yeah. This is us being completely honest. So Alex wrote up a article following this announcement of the ports for the Pixel Remaster saying, furthermore, via multiple confidential sources, RPG Site understands that the console release of the Pixel Remasters will feature an adjusted font. None of us here have heard that. We
people
don't know
who write for RPG Site, we are obligated to say they will most likely fix it based on what our boss wrote up as people who exist on the internet and are just play RPGs. We do not know if that report is like true or not for real.
Yeah. As the RPG site writer, yeah, we've got sources. As me, myself, and I, what? But I guess stay tuned.
So. Yeah, we're terrible employees.
Alex will never listen to this. It's okay.
Look, all I'm saying is I know that he said that like they were like the English side was trying to get that fixed as far back as the first release on PC. So I don't know.
I mean, as much as we kind of were taking the piss there, I mean, I hope he's right.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for him to be right because that fucking current font that they had, the default font, is fucking unusable on like big ass TVs and even like on Switch handheld. People are gonna be like, "What the fuck am I reading?" Well, we'll find out sooner or later.
And then the last piece of news on a Square Enix front is that Triangle Strategy, which did release on PC later in the year. And then the Game of the Year discussion actually kind of reminded me how much I did really enjoy that game. Has sold 1 million copies total combined digital sales and physical shipments. So well done for Triangle Strategy. Kind of our most anticipated game of 2022, and maybe didn't quite reach as high as some of us maybe would have been expected. was a really, really solid quality game.
I still like it a lot. I saw like seeing my friend struggle through it because he's not really good at strategy RPGs, but he's playing through Triangle Strategy right now, and he was like stuck at that mission where you can burn the houses down and house full for it. And he was like, how do I do this? I can't do it. I'm like, I believe in you.
No, that was one of the toughest missions because I think it's early on enough in the game where you don't quite have your like powerhouse team or your perfect strategy
Right.
yet, so you're kind of just flying blind in what the best strategies are, and your characters probably aren't quite all configured. But
Right.
that's a challenging game.
Mm-hmm.
And the last two bits of news here are just kind of one's from the Game Awards, and one is very recent, as of just like the last week. So this was kind of a surprise from the Game Awards, but we have another online RPG being published by Amazon Games, and that is Blue Protocol, which is being developed by Bandai Namco. And I know some people have been searching and awaiting this game for a long time because I believe it was originally announced like in 2018 or 2019. But the Blue Protocol, all their social channels went dark for a good while until they started kicking up a lot, some new interest in mid to late 2022.
Yeah, they're like in heavy development pretty much, so they went like radio silent to focus on development and distribution, I imagine.
I think after Lost Ark, I've just decided I do not want to play any MMOs that are completely free to play.
Mm-hmm.
Just
yeah. So the Amazon's kind of put itself in this weird place because they publish. Tell me if I have this wrong. They are developing and publishing New World. Then they publish Lost Ark, and now they're publishing Blue Protocol. And I know that New World and Lost Ark have held on to some decent player numbers on Steam. So I think they're like, they haven't been shouting it from the rooftops, but even though I haven't been playing those games, it seems like by all rights they've been a success.
I mean, they've been able to retain. I know, like, I'm more intimately familiar with like how they've handled Lost Ark, and like they've had a lot of issues, like in the first like 5 to 6 months of that partnership of like lighting up announced like when they're gonna distribute content and like the amount of like free materials that they give to players to like kind of quote unquote catch up to the current content update at the Korea. I think they're stabilizing the pipeline now to be like, I think they're like 2 to 3 months behind the Lost Ark content updates in Korea, and I think they're gonna maintain that. I think that's what they're aiming for. I don't know if they've reached it already or if that's how it is, but they've stabilized that. I don't know, but the bad part about what's been happening on their end is there's like a heavy botting problem in Lost Ark, from what I understand.
That's been a problem since launch,
Yeah, and then like it's been driving up like the economy prices for like the currency that you can buy for money, like that the price of that fluctuates depending on the state of the player economy and the market there, and like those prices are way more inflated in the West than they are in Korea. So that's been like a major problem from what I understand, at least in the English version. So that doesn't really inspire confidence, for how Amazon is partnering with Bandai Namco for Blue Protocol. I don't know exactly how that game's being monetized. Obviously, I haven't played it. I don't know exactly how that's gonna go. But I really hope that it's for the best, because I have to imagine like this is how it went down, where like Bandai Namco probably had like plans to release this in the West on their own, but it'd be at a very delayed rate, like maybe like next year or maybe like 2 years out from like the original Japanese version. But maybe Amazon probably stepped in and say, hey, partner with us and we can get it out with you this year. So
hopefully the translation's in a better state than Lost Ark was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So hopefully it works out. It's hard to say one way or the other how these things will go, but best of luck. I try it out and hopefully it's fun. I guess I'll keep a close eye on like what the Japanese response is, like how people are liking it there. But from my experience with Lost Ark, after playing 200 plus hours of that and with the Amazon partnership, it's like, and being like more when I was still more well informed of like that partnership and like what was like the inner workings, and like I don't know, it could go one way or the other. Really, it's very iffy.
So after this trailer was shown at the Game Awards for Blue Protocol, I saw a lot of people immediately comparing it to Genshin Impact, and then immediately the feedback, a lot of people saying, no, it's nothing like Genshin Impact. Though as someone who has not played either game, I can easily see like the art style and the animation the way that the trailer was framed, I can see why that comparison's made. And apparently, I haven't seen this myself, but apparently, like the publisher, I don't know if from Amazon or Bandai, has made the comparison themselves when talking to other outlets. So is it actually a colleague to Genshin Impact? I'm not sure. As my understanding is that it's a different style of game, but of course,
I think it's just an art style type of thing. From what I understand, it's more of a traditional MMO. Like it's not
Exactly,
like gunning for characters or anything.
Also, it makes sense for them to compare it to Genshin Impact because it's like that's the popular one, and everyone
exactly.
It's like yeah.
So I mean, if they're officially making like the call out on their own, I think that's fair game. To like, if you're gonna say that and on your own word, then like people are gonna take you at your word. You know, if you want to compare yourselves as a competitor to Genshin Impact, then you know what you're signing up for as well.
I'm surprised that PSO2 hasn't done that with New Genesis because from what I can tell, that's much more of a valid comparison.
But this one also just has the art style.
Well, no, I mean like the fact that it's like an open zone type thing.
Open zone, like Sonic Frontiers.
You know what I meant.
New Genesis. It's been out for like 2 years now, right? Something like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It is now. It now has the amount of content that it should have had when it launched.
Yeah,
and even
I was
then,
thinking of starting it soon because it's like now it has like 4 regions. Is it?
Yeah, but even then, the game is like 90% combat, and all the questing is still really, really, really bad. So yeah, I still can't suggest it. Don't play it.
Okay, all right. I'll take you at your word.
Was there any other final thoughts on Blue Protocol? Yeah, I'm excited for it. I don't know if I have the time for that sort of game anymore, but I do think it looks really.
I gave MMOs a shot last year. I mean, I quote unquote got through it, but I mean, the lesson I learned from it was like I don't know if I can do MMOs anymore. I can't do the cycle anymore. Hey, but think about it like this: I've known who quit the earliest out of my friends, and all my friends eventually quit it too. So
a lot of people I know basically quit that game. I just think the people who are still stay on, they're just a little high on sunk cost fallacy. So.
I mean, hey, if they genuinely enjoy that type of game and are willing to do like the maintenance on it, like, okay, more power to them.
I enjoyed Lost Ark up until the moment it reminded me it was a Korean free-to-play MMORPG.
I already knew that going in. I was like, all right, but does it don't look like a Korean free-to-play MMO? It's like, yep, here I am.
Specifically, it was the like honing bullshit where it's like chance to fail.
Yeah,
it just got really annoying because it's like RNG where it's like I might not progress at all this week, and that sucks.
That's my experience with Ion, and that taught me to never touch a Korean MMO again. As much as
it's okay, James. They have pity. It's okay. Eventually, you'll be able to like get that guaranteed honing
after like 20 fucking chances.
Oof.
Oh,
I guess I didn't have that in Ion. There was no pity. The game just laughs at your face. You fucked up until you go do it all again.
That's what I mean. Where it's like if Lost Ark was a subscription MMO, I would still be playing it because the actual like gameplay really good.
Yeah, they made it more a subscription type model. I think it would really benefit, but that doesn't make money compared to free to play.
Yeah, I might try. What was it? New World eventually, because apparently with updates, people are really liking it now.
Oh, really? It really stabilized? All right.
And this is not really tied or related to any of the other stories on this list, but it just dropped a couple days ago. Originally reported out by Jason Schreier at Bloomberg. This is about Wizards of the Coast, which is Hasbro's studio that is all things Dungeons and Dragons. Over the last couple of years, Wizards of the Coast had developed and kind of pushed a newly renewed focus on digital entertainment and video games. However, according to this Bloomberg report, it seems like as of 2023, they are quickly pulling back some of those ambitions. This included a layoff of over a dozen employees. They have canceled some projects at Other Side Entertainment and Hidden Path Entertainment. So these are Dungeons and Dragons video games that were not ever formally announced, but it sounds like these projects are no longer underway. Obviously, we've got Baldur's Gate 3, which is through early access, already sold like million copies or something like that. So that one seems safe and is underneath. Yeah, that one seems safe and is underneath Larian, who is, they know what they're doing and they've had a ton of success. But for those that really were hoping to see, I guess, like, the only thing that we really got out of this as of right now is that Dark Alliance reboot from last year that came and went with a complete whimper.
Yeah. Oh god. The weird thing about this is, like, the Hidden Path Twitter actually gave a pushback on, like, Schreier's reporting, saying, like, hey, we just want to set the record straight, saying that, like, our D&D project with Wizards is still happening. And then Jason replied back to that, saying that that's very unusual and unfortunate, but, like, he stands by his reporting, that, like, the Wizards of the Coast spokesperson that he talked to.
I trust Schreier's reporting, so it's very unfortunate that they just didn't know. That's messed up.
Yeah,
he learned before the staff did.
So we don't actually, like, Hidden Path is still has not, like, released an official statement saying that it's been canceled. Like, as far as they know, or, like, have they communicated publicly last, that they still believe that their D&D game is still on. So it's, Jason, talked to the Wizards of the Coast spokesperson, and as far as they communicated with him, that Hidden Path's D&D game is canceled. So we'll see what the fallout of that is and what actually is the truth from that. But it's just such a weird, bad miscommunication if their game is actually canceled and they didn't know until the Bloomberg report.
Yeah, so right now where we stand is Bloomberg is saying that over 5 D&D projects have been canceled. At least one of them, the one from Hidden Path, has pushed back, saying we haven't heard anything. Bloomberg standing by it, and that's where we stand. So, like, a lot of these, almost all of these projects, we can only glean what they were based on, like, hiring pages. Like, apparently the Hidden Path game is a open world action RPG according to their, like, hiring page, but that's all we know because a lot of these haven't been announced. AAA open world third person single player RPG being published by Wizards of the Coast, so likely D&D related. But we will obviously, if we learn one way or the other, we will follow up. But as of right now, it seems like they are trying to stick with something. They're making this decision out of perceived profitability. So my guess is that they did not make a return from their Dark Alliance game, and now they're getting cold feet. The only thing that I still remember about that game was it. Well, their stock price has been tanked in the last year, just for multiple.
Not just that, but ventures. Like, outside of games, there's been, like, a whole thing with like a license thing with D&D where people are really pissed because they're clamping down entirely on, like, derivative works.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, it just seems like in general, like, Hasbro's, like, kind of so maybe it could I'm sure, like, profitability is, like, a big part of it, but I'm also pretty sure, like, I wouldn't be shocked if part of it is they also want to make sure that they, like, keep things in-house as much as possible going forward.
I just realized that Hidden Path's tweet where they say they're still working on it is actually a hiring recruit. They say, check out our jobs page, we're hiring. So I don't want to pick a side, but, like, I hope that they are right.
Yeah,
I want to say I'm pretty sure Jason Schreier hopes he's wrong too.
Yeah,
yeah. Like, I don't hope anyone's wrong because I want someone to be right and someone to be wrong. I just don't want people to lose their jobs, sort of thing. So,
at least for the internal staff, like, one of the things they said was, yeah, we axe these positions, but you can apply to other positions, like, immediately within the company. And so it's like,
right.
It's still not great, but it's like, at least they're like, yeah, we're, like, direct, like, you're going to be, I'm assuming, at, like, the front of the list.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously we'll follow up whenever we hear any more details about the cancellation of projects, not only at Hidden Path, but, apparently at 4 other projects have been canceled as well. Some of those we probably likely won't hear anything of, but we'll follow up if anything comes through, either Hidden Path directly or from Bloomberg or otherwise. And that is not absolutely everything that came out in from the news standpoint over the last month and a half, but I think that hits all of the highlights. Obviously, we have some games that are coming out early in 2023 that had a few more look-ins late last year, early this year, like Atomic Heart, the first-person action RPG that's releasing early this year. I think got another trailer. A few other indie projects were announced. As those news keeps filtering through early this year, we will be able to be a bit more comprehensive as we go back to our weekly format for this podcast. But obviously, it's good to get back to normalcy and have the whole crew here again on our first podcast of the year to get the ball rolling again. And some of us maybe might be playing One Piece in a week, or Fire Emblem in 2 weeks, or maybe Forspoken in 3 weeks. So there is no stopping this train. I guess we're going in right into the deep end right away. If you still got to play Crisis Core or Tactics Ogre or any of the other games that were released last year that you didn't get to, it seems like you might have a week or two before things really start kicking off. So good luck. I know Adam wants to really get to Star Ocean. Good luck.
Yep. You got it.
Apparently, I get to play the baby version of Star Ocean.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's got updated. I still got to play Soul Hackers with the sprint. Sprint option.
Hear this, Brian. Adam can now play Star Ocean. He can now scan while running in that game.
Jesus Christ.
I hear that's like cheating.
I need to re-download Monochrome Mobius because apparently they did a major patch. So it's like, oh, I wonder.
Did they give NPC models?
They gave them faces.
Holy shit!
Wow,
huge.
No, but thank you all so much for listening. We hope you're happy that we're back, because we're going to be back and going seemingly weekly throughout 2023. If you have not listened to our nearly 7-hour Game of the Year podcast, it's up on all the podcast services. If you can look at our published list and wondering how we picked one game over another in any of the categories or for our main list, you can hear our whole deliberation because we recorded it all for you. And you get to hear some voices that you don't normally get to hear on the Tetracast. So that's always really kind of fun. And even though it's always a long, grueling day, I'm glad that we did it. Take a listen to that. If you already have or have no interest, go ahead and leave some comments here. We have all the features that we called out on the site. You can leave comments there or on the reviews that all went up throughout the month of December. And we will starting to put some more features up on the site this week. You should see the Fire Emblem preview soon. And then I might be writing a Harvestella review, potentially. We'll see what we have time for in January before things get really busy. You can follow RPG Site on all the social media channels. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Join our Discord by clicking the link at the top of the homepage at rpgsite.net or by typing discord.gg/rpgsite. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast as we go back into our normal schedule. So as always, new year, but still, same thank you for supporting us and listening to us for 2 to 3 hours every week. We appreciate it so much. And until next time, stay safe and take care. And we'll talk to you guys later.
We are the most disloyal RPG Site staff.